Welcome, everybody, to the Brickyard Podcast, going over all of the moves going on around the NFL in free agency, the quarterback carousel, as well as going over the winners, the losers of free agency, going over Jason Tatum, Timberwolves, and a whole lot more.
Yeah, going over a whole lot more, and hopefully you all had a good St. Patty's Day. Hopefully none of you got arrested, although I know some of our viewers probably did, but had a good Saturday night when we went out for St. Patrick's Days, and the city was absolutely electric on Sunday.
Absolutely electric.
Absolutely electric, eh? Yeah, definitely a good time, so hopefully all of you stayed safe, but we are here to talk about NFL free agency because it's been one of the craziest weeks. It's one of the busiest weeks of the year. Some may say it's better than preseason football or the NFL draft, and we're here to break it all down. So we're going to go over basically every single team signings, only going to talk about the big ones or ones that make a difference or ones we think are funny to us, and we'll dive right into it, starting with the Buffalo Bills, and this is going in order, AFC to NFC East. So Buffalo Bills sign a backup quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, but the big story was really they cut everybody. That Josh Allen contract is kicking in this year. Jordan Poyer is gone. Tre'Davious White is gone. Pretty much every major name they had on there just because they signed that Khalil Mack deal. Khalil Mack is a little bit older now, but they're paying him over $20 million for a senior citizen.
For Von Miller, right?
For Von Miller, yeah. And then basically everyone else on that defense is gone. So Bills going through a soft rebuild. We said after last year, their window would be slammed shut. And you had a home game versus the Chiefs, couldn't get it done. And now the Bills going into a full rebuild here.
Yeah, so they lost not only just the players they had to cut like Jordan Poyer and Tre'Davious White, they lost Gabe Davis. They replaced him with Curtis Samuel. Mac Hollins they signed as well. But other than that, a lot of losses there. Bills should definitely take a step back this year.
Yeah, Bills are probably going to take a step back. And this is just what happens when you have to sign your winning quarterback a lot of money, and you have Josh Allen on that team, and he's a top 10. Some people would put him in the top 5 there. So that's just kind of what comes with the territory at this point. But you are blessed because you're in the same division as the Patriots, who won't spend on defense. Same division as Miami, who didn't really do that much either. Major headline was them losing Christian Wilkins, who's the kind of anchor in the middle of that defensive line last year. He ends up goes to Vegas, leaves Miami. So if you're going to leave Miami, Vegas is about as good as you can get as a replacement. But, I mean, you sign Johnny Smith, offensive lineman, you beefed up there. You got Isaiah Wynn, re-signed him and Robert Jones. And then you also signed Jack Driscoll, and then you also signed a center, Aaron Brewer, to a 3-year contract there. And then Shaq Barrett as well. That's a huge addition on the defensive line there. Yeah. So was able to pick up some good pieces there. And then we have players like Kendall Fuller that you picked up at corner. Nick Needham re-signed. And then you were able to get Jordan Poyer from the Buffalo Bills there. So a lot of defensive signings here. Jonathan Harris as well, Neville Gilmore. So very defensive heavy for the Miami Dolphins, and as they should be. Draft, basically all you need is an offensive line and a run game, and then everything else was defense there. So does this make you more optimistic about Miami heading into next year?
I think it makes me more optimistic because of what's happening to the Bills. What's the current state of the Patriots and Jets right now? So with their defense, if they can play it to their ability, they also got Jordan Brooks as well, then they can win the division next year, as long as they can stay afloat at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I like just the leadership that's going to be on this defense now, because you already have Jalen Ramsey, been to a Super Bowl and won it. You have Jordan Poyer, who has had moments in the playoffs at least, and then you have Shaq Barrett, who also went to the Super Bowl and won it. So this is going to be a hungry team. It's going to be a veteran team, and I feel like that'll also help Tua and Mike McDaniel a lot. And then you add that with Tyreek Hill and his experience on offense. Miami Dolphins, successful free agency, I would say, for them.
Yeah, especially when we went over them in the preview, we saw how bad their salary cap was. But for them to be able to sign some of the players they have, I don't think it's a perfect offseason by any means. But I think rather the Bills taking a step back and them kind of staying where they were, I think, with some of the losses they had and how they replaced them, then I think the Dolphins should feel comfortable going into next season, potentially winning the division.
Yeah, I think you should feel comfortable because really, like, you would get cooked. Like, your offense couldn't do anything in big games, but your defense would also get cooked. And then you lose Christian Wilkins. He's your big guy, where if you do spend money on him, you probably don't have as much money to fill 2 linebackers, 3 defensive tackles, 2 corners, and Jordan Poyer at safety there. So communication will at least be better. And then you have a new defensive coordinator at well. So A+ for Miami. Very impressive.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that, not impressive. The New England Patriots. So first move they make, they're like, all right, let's go out there and get Antonio Gibson, the running back from Washington. Because as a Patriots fans, we know one thing they need is another running back. They're obsessed. They're like how the Jaguars are obsessed with mid-tier wide receivers. The New England Patriots are obsessed with mid-tier running backs. They're like, okay, a guy who's mid, let's go ahead and overpay for him. I mean, 3-year deal, $11 million. That's fine. And then they're like, all right, we need a wide receiver too. Let's re-sign Kendrick Bourne, sign KJ Osborne, and then re-sign Jalen Reagor. And then you end up bringing in Austin Hooper, and you got a deal done with Hunter Henry. But everything else was basically you re-sign some people, and then you got Taki and Antonio Gibson.
Yeah. The start of this offseason for the Patriots have been a little underwhelmed. We know they have their 3rd overall pick. Where will they go? Is it Marvin Harrison? Is it a quarterback? But one thing I was hoping for with Gerard Mayo's first season, like first offseason, was, is he going to break the mold of Belichick? Is he going to go out and get a receiver? They were in on Calvin Ridley and Keenan Allen, but they didn't open their wallets up enough for Calvin Ridley, and he wasn't interested in going there anyways. And then for Keenan Allen, they didn't want to give up a 4th-round pick to get him. So here they are now. The receiver core might be worse than it was last year, if that's even possible. And they making the same moves that they would have made with Belichick. So I'm not overly optimistic. I'm going to give it like a D so far for their offset. They haven't really gotten that much better.
Yeah, it's a D so far. And it's like, what actually are we doing here? Because we have all of this free money that you want to spend. Everyone is talking about how it's Bill Belichick that doesn't want to go out there and spend big money on wide receivers. I'm like, okay, let's go through a year without Bill Belichick and see how different it is. And it feels like the exact same football team. And then you're like, okay, what hasn't changed? It's the owner. So who was making these decisions to not sign big wide receivers, to get rid of guys and not having to pay money and then maneuver the salary cap so we're not being cheap here, basically, or we're not signing big name guys? It's like, okay, was it all on Bill Belichick, or was some of that rubber crap putting pressure on Bill Belichick and them just having the wherewithal to go out there and then manipulate the salary cap better than any head coach when he had Tom Brady and he was taking discounts for the team there, and Brady was the one who enabled this. But like, this is the year where you have all of this free salary cap. If you're going to go out there and draft a Jaden Daniels, you're going to draft a Jake May, you need to have all of the pieces around him. And you're terrible at drafting wide receivers. And you're terrible at developing them as well. And your head coach is a defensive guy, brought in a new offensive coordinator, which is good. But like, you're still, as a franchise, you haven't had that good of luck developing or drafting wide receivers even before or after Bill Belichick. So what really has changed here? And then everyone's like, okay, it was all on Bill Belichick before. Now he isn't even there. So you're not going to get the defensive players that are like, I want to play for the greatest defensive head coach in history, which was a big draw before when you got players like Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis, Aqib Talib,
Matt Judon.
Yeah. Brandon Browner there, and then you got one of the best defensives in the league, and you could be a part of that. They're like, do I want to go take my chances with the new rookie head coach? Not really. Like, if we had Belichick, we probably could have gotten someone like Christian Wilkins, who is available, beef up the defensive line. But this is just more of the same with a worse head coach. And it's no shade on their new head coach. It's just like, we still haven't seen him perform yet. But it's like, okay, I guess it wasn't all on Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and now I feel like with them not getting Calvin Ridley or Keenan Allen, now at this point, the receiver room in free agency is not looking the greatest. I think at this point, I'm leaning more towards them getting Marvin Harrison and then getting a quarterback in the 2nd round. And then, because you guys are 4 years out of being competitive. Go out, get a quarterback to bridge along. You sign Jacoby Brissett, who's familiar with the system. Just suck this next year, go after a quarterback next year, and just build the team around him first. Because whoever they get, whether it's Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I don't think that they're going to be in a great situation to start at all.
No, they're not going to be in a good situation to start. And then what does it say that, we don't want to give up a 4th-round pick for Keenan Allen? That was the sway there? Are you kidding me? Like, what receiver in the 4th round are you going to draft that's better than Keenan Allen? Oh, wait, you're the Patriots. Nobody. And then back-to-back years where you lose a wide receiver to the Titans. And I get they're kind of the retirement home for the Titans, but DeAndre Hopkins said, nope, I'm good. Calvin Ridley said, nope, I'm good. And if it's a question of a few $1,000,000, sure. Did the Tennessee Titans overpay for him? Yes. But was he the best wide receiver available in free agency? Yes. So that is what's going to demand and command more money in the market because he had all the leverage to say, hey, you need a wide receiver. There's not that many great options out there. So I want more money because I get to take advantage of, guess what? Basic economics, supply and demand. And there wasn't that many great wide receivers out there. And the Patriots are still pinching pennies over a few $1,000,000. Okay, well, have fun having one of the worst offenses to watch in the league.
Yeah, no kidding. And then the Jets, they went out, they signed Tyrod Taylor.
Ooh, they got a backup quarterback.
They got a backup quarterback, something they did not have last year. They got Tyron Smith, which is huge for them, somebody who desperately needs offensive line help. They signed a few other offensive linemen as well.
They got Morgan Moses, from the Ravens.
Yep, they brought in John Simpson, and then they also re-signed Greg the Leg Zuerlein, so they're moving upward, I would say the Jets are.
Yeah, the Jets are moving upward. I like that they beefed up the offensive line. It was definitely a weakness this year. So the fact that they are able to go out there, get 2 offensive tackles, you get John Simpson there, and then Tyron Smith is a little bit older. Morgan Moses is a little bit older as well, but you're able to acquire him via a trade, gave up a 4th-round pick, and then you end up swapping a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick there. So you didn't give up too much, and then you finally get to beef up that offensive line. So hopefully that keeps Aaron healthy if he's not running for president, or at least Tyrod Taylor. Just give these guys a little bit more time to give Garrett Wilson the ball, and then pick up a wide receiver in the draft, with the Jets aren't terrible at. So I think they're in a good spot. So decent overall.
Yeah, definitely a team that could either be 7-10 or 11-6 potentially, depending on how things go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so we have everyone in the AFC East there covered. Not too much with the Jets, not too much with the Bills, except them cutting everyone. Then we have the North here. And if you tuned into our Baltimore Ravens offseason preview, what did I say? Can we get another running back outside of Lamar Jackson? And can we get someone who's better at running the football than Lamar Jackson? And what did they do? They go out there and get Derrick Henry, the king himself, the guy who wants to get to and win a Super Bowl. I was like, they just need someone who can take the pressure off of Lamar. I'm like, okay, how about a 6'5" truck out of the backfield?
Yeah, they basically replaced Gus the Bus Edwards with Derrick Henry, who you can say, there's a few other guys you can shout out for best of this generation. Maybe it's Adrian Peterson or whoever else, Christian McCaffrey, but Derrick Henry, dominance-wise, is he going to be the level of dominance he was in 2019? Maybe not, but it doesn't matter because you have him there on a 2-year deal, not super expensive, believe it or not, for that deal, $9 million guaranteed. And then you have with Lamar and his running abilities with Derrick Henry. They have Zay Flowers in his 2nd year. That offense is going to look nice, and they brought back Nelson Aguilar as well. I think they'll draft a wide receiver, but that offense with him and Derrick, that's disgusting.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting there. And this is what I wanted the Baltimore Ravens to do. And thankfully, they tune into the most informed, the most accurate, and the most just electric football show on the interwebs. And
yes, the documents.
We unsealed the documents of what the Baltimore Ravens needed to do, and they listened to us. And now they're going to have Derrick Henry next year, absolutely thumping people. And then Justin Madubuike was a good guy that they needed to resign there, the ankle in the middle of that defensive line, and you end up locking him up for 4 years on a $98 million contract. Then you resign a few other players, but now in the draft, we're going receiver, and we're going receiver again. And then maybe you pick up some corners, and you need another linebacker to pick up Patrick Queen. But overall, great offseason for the Ravens so far.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then the Bengals here, we saw them move on from Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon was traded to the Texans. We'll go over them in a second. And then they bring in Zach Moss on a 2-year deal. T. Higgins gets tagged. And then they brought back Trent Irwin. They signed Mike Gesicki. They signed Sheldon Rankins, Von Bell. A couple of nice players there. Big signing, though, for me, moving off of Joe Mixon and signing Zach Moss. I think this is actually a super underrated signing for them. They get younger. They get a guy who's maybe has fresher legs, and they're going to pay less to have him. So they have $4 million guaranteed. So great contract. I like what they've done.
Yeah, I think Zach Moss really works for the Bengals because he's a better version of what Samaje Perine was for Joe Burrow. And a
Mm.
lot of the times in those playoff games, what really helped them was when Joe Burrow was able to get the ball out quick to the running back, and Samaje Perine would pick up 15, 20, sometimes 60 yards. And Zach Moss is definitely able to do that. So the fact that they were able to get an upgrade at running back, you're probably going to draft another one to replace Joe Mixon as well, because he's not that absolute thumper that Mixon was. So get someone more physical in the draft there. And then at tight end, very mediocre, but you got Mike Gesicki, you got Tanner Hudson and Drew Sample, guys who can do enough. But biggest thing is taking away Geno Stone away from the Browns. I think that's a huge move. And then getting Von Bell. So now you have more help in your secondary. You're able to get another defensive tackle and Sheldon Rankins. And the Bengals had some of the most cap space this year. And the fact that they're able to do all of this, and they've been really good at drafting under Zach Taylor, I think the Bengals, as long as Joe Burrow is healthy, going to be even better than the Bengals teams that were in the conference championships in years past. So
Oh yeah,
great offseason for the Bengals.
yeah. I like what they've done a lot.
And then Cleveland, they got your boy. They got your
Jameis.
friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Jameis Winston. I love this signing. Now, do I think he's going to start? Probably not, but I'd love to see him fill in, play a couple of games with them. He is the most entertaining bag quarterback of all time. Love to see it. They also acquired Jerry Jeudy for a 5th and 6th round pick. And then outside of that, bringing back Zadarius Smith. They have Shelby Harris coming in, Jordan Hicks.
Devin Bush.
Oh my God.
They signed Devin Bush as well. So I like what they've done. I don't think that they've improved dramatically. They did lose a couple of players, but Jameis, Jerry, Zadarius Smith coming back, I like it.
Do you actually like Jerry Jeudy, though? Because I know he's kind of been an enemy of the show. You haven't been the biggest fan of him. You've called him a mediocre wide receiver.
Yes.
You've ripped on him in Denver. Is it because of a new scenery you think that'll really help change the vibe of Jerry Jeudy? Maybe hanging out, bumping some tunes with Jameis Winston's going to help him just have the serotonin going before games? Or do you think just him being a third option in that offense where you have a brilliant offensive head coach in Kevin Stefanski, 2-time Coach of the Year winner, you have someone like Njoku, Amari Cooper, and Elijah Moore that can really take the pressure off of him?
I think Jerry Judy's ceiling would be at the second and not on that team, and I think he's a fine receiver. I think him being the 2, I think he has another level he can go under Kevin Stefanski. Denver was just not the great fit for him. You were throwing with Drew Lock, you had Russell Wilson, you had Jared Stidham for a while. I just think him getting out of Denver is great, and you didn't pay much to get him. A 5th and a 6th round pick, like, that's good. Happy for him.
Yeah, happy for him. So pretty solid offseason for the Browns. You didn't dramatically get worse, and then you weren't heartless. You kept Nick Chubb on that team. So I think as long as Deshaun Watson is healthy next year, that's really going to determine how far you go. And then you got Jameis Winston. Not in love with that if he's going to be your starting guy, but you do have to complete with Steelers Nation. Let's weld. Russell Wilson is there, and breaking news on Saturday, we were all hanging out when this happened. Justin Fields, basically the Bears get fleeced. There was no market for him, and Justin Fields is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. They gave up a conditional pick for him, and I believe it was a 4th and a 6th round pick for Justin Fields there.
So they get a 6th round pick, but if he plays more than half of their snaps, it's a 4th.
Okay, if it's more than half of their snaps there. And then the Steelers did come out and say that Justin Fields will not be competing for the starting job. And I have to say that's buffoonery. And I kind of call bullshit on that because how is he not going to compete with Russell Wilson, who has refused to run over the past few years, came into camp out of shape when he first got to Denver, absolutely fleeced them for $80 million in dead cap that they have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Signed one of the worst contracts in NFL history. Not his fault. Now he's there for $1 million. You have Justin Fields on that team, and you're not going to want to market him as an asset to other teams next year to be able to trade him for someone who may want him on their team and see what he's like under a stable situation. I don't know about that. I think he's going to be competing.
No, I know what they're going to do. They're going to play Russell Wilson the first month of the season. He's going to start off 1-3. He's going to be mediocre. And then they're going to go to Justin Fields. And Justin Fields, hopefully, will elevate his game. Just sitting under Russ for a couple of games. I think especially that playing time condition for that draft pick, they don't really need to rush him playing. but him watching under Russell Wilson, borderline Hall of Famer at this point, so sits behind him. Russell Wilson, they're only paying $1 million for. We're talking about a quarterback situation, and we're going to go over the 2022 draft later today, going over them, getting rid of Kenny Pickett, adding these two guys. The situation that they were in when we last recorded on last Monday to now, the quarterback situation isn't great, but it's a high ceiling, low floor sort of situation.
Yeah, and I like it because both of these quarterbacks could be bad, but you'll see which one of these quarterbacks actually wants to compete. Does Russell Wilson actually want to play in the NFL? Well, what better situation to bring in a younger, more athletic player than Russell Wilson, who's not as good as throwing the football, can't think the game quite as well as Russell Wilson at this point in his career, but he's going to be breathing down his neck, and then Russell Wilson is also going to show him how to work out, how to study film, and then a lot more leadership of how to be a professional, which he really didn't have in Chicago. My only worry with this is Arthur Smith is still your offensive coordinator. I'm not in love with that because he really doesn't know how to use weapons, and he proved that in Atlanta. So we'll see how that works out. But I like that the Steelers are like, okay, we'll have both of these guys compete with each other. And Kenny Pickett, they asked him, they're like, how do you feel about this? And he's like, no, I don't really want to compete with Russell Wilson. He just kind of wants to be the backup in Philadelphia, which is confusing to me. Because if you're Kenny Pickett, you don't want to compete in Pittsburgh. Okay. Then you're going to go to Philadelphia where your job is even less secure and more, you're going to be the backup here. Like, that's confusing because Russ has a chance to suck. And I don't think he's going to be awful. And I don't think he's going to be that bad. I think he'll be fine. But if you're Kenny Pickett, you'll be like, you drafted me. You have stock in me. I'm from Pittsburgh and you're investing in me. And then Russell Wilson could have some bad games here and there. And then we'll try it with Kenny Pickett. But then you're going to send him to Philadelphia where your job to be a starter, you have even less of a chance there. For me, I don't really get what the hang up was with Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, especially for somebody who has some of the worst statistical numbers of a first-round quarterback in NFL history. Lowest touchdown percentage for a guy throwing more than 500 passes. I think this is something where they didn't like that he brought in Russell Wilson. So he's like, you know what? Trade me to the crosstown rival pit. Doesn't even have to leave the state. Goes to Philadelphia, and now he gets to hold Jalen Hurts' clipboard. Congratulations. And now that draft, which is already a terrible quarterback draft, we'll go over later, you're basically just going to be holding his clipboard for the rest of your time there. And maybe someone takes another chance on you afterwards.
Yeah, I don't get why you're so like, oh, you brought in Russell Wilson, but I want to go be Justin Fields' backup and lackey there. Like, I don't get that because you have even less of a chance to start in Philadelphia than you do in Pittsburgh, or maybe they wanted him to compete with Justin Fields too, but I don't think they would have traded for Justin Fields if Kenny Pickett wanted to stay.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But yeah, we covered that trade, covered Russell Wilson being there. And then we also had Patrick Queen, a 3-year, $41 million deal. That was one signing I saw. I'm like, most underrated signing probably of the offseason, because not only do you sign a great linebacker to pair with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, but you get younger at that position as well. Solves a little bit of your problem stopping the run there. And then you take him away from Baltimore, you get younger, and then you also acquire Dante Jackson in your secondary from the Carolina Panthers, and you sign Deshaun Elliott at safety. I'm like, okay. The Steelers are loading up on defense, and I think their defense will definitely be better this year than last year. So if Russ or Justin Fields is above average, I think the Steelers have a great chance of making it back to the playoffs.
I think that they were a 9-8 team last year, obviously, but I think they've reached another level. I think now they're able to win a playoff game in the right situation. Their defense got better, and their offense, Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph compared to Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, I don't think those guys are that much better, but they're better enough where I feel more confident with them. If Russell Wilson, as I mentioned, if he can be the last year in Seattle good, great. And if Justin Fields can reach that second level, then they had one of the best off seasons.
Yeah, no, I think they have one of the best off seasons, and especially just making your quarterbacks compete. And then it's going to push Justin Fields. It's going to push Russell Wilson. And then if neither of them pan out, then you go to the draft next year. But I think it's a great deal because you get Russell Wilson for $1 million, and then you get a first round quarterback who is drafted in the top 10 or top 15 at least for Chicago for a 4th or a 6th round pick, depending on how much he plays there. So great moves for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really like what they're doing right now. And then team who is absolutely phenomenal, dominating the offseason right now. Just when we go over all of these contracts, we have the Houston Texans, who is my Super Bowl pick early for next year, but they go out there. What do? Trade for Joe Mixon. You get some depth at the running back position there.
Love that move.
You re-sign Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz. You re-sign your offensive lineman, and then you go out there. You sign Danico Autry, big signing on defense. You sign Tim Settle for $7 million, and then you go out there, and if it wasn't bad enough to have Will Anderson Jr., you get Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings.
Top 5 in sacks last year.
You have 2 top 5 edge rushers statistically from last year.
Danielle Hunter, Defensive Player of the Year candidate too.
Yeah, in a 2-year, $40 million deal, and as a max value of $51 million, and then you go down the list and you're like, okay, Aziz Al-Shir, Del'Shawn Phillips, you have Mike Ford at corner, Lonnie Johnson, you re-signed Desmond King, you signed Jeffrey Okudah, you signed 4 corners, Danielle Hunter, and you signed 2 linebackers on this defense, as if it wasn't already scary enough last year. This is a team that's absolutely making moves right now.
Absolutely. I think that at this point, you have the Chiefs, they're the dynasty, but then the second best team in the AFC right now, it's the Texans. After how great Will Anderson was, he's only going to get better with Danielle Hunter there. And then getting Danielle Hunter on this 2-year deal, where by the time this contract expires, you're going to be right near paying CJ Stroud. And then also getting Joe Mixon for a 7th round pick, don't have to compete with the rest of the market. You get him there, you pair him with Dameon Pierce, who I think they'll complement each other very well. Now at this point, you can go after a wide receiver in the draft. You can maybe fill up some offensive line help, but this team is closing every hole that they had before.
Yeah,
it's insane.
It's insane to look at the Houston Texans and then you go down the list and like move after move after move. And DeMeco Ryans is going to know how to make that defensive fit. He's coached under Kyle Shanahan. He knows how to build a team, and they're structuring this team where people are saying, like, is this a better team than the Dallas Cowboys in Texas? I'm like, they already are. Close. First of all, they already made it further in the playoffs last year, and then they have more playoffs wins than the Dallas Cowboys do since the year 2000. So if we're going to talk about VHS tapes, sure, the Dallas Cowboys are better. But if we're talking about the modern era, the Houston Texans have been the better franchise so far. And now you sign a defense. You sign 4 corners, a couple linebackers, the best defensive edge rusher available, and he wants to play in Houston there. And then now this year, all you have to do is draft a running back, some offensive line depth, and another wide receiver. It's like you set yourself up for the draft perfectly, because maybe you sign a dominant middle linebacker in the first round, or you draft one, and then you're going wide receiver. You're trying to find one of those really exceptional 3rd round running backs there. The Houston Texans, my God, they're going to be terrifying.
They won the offseason.
Let's see what they do in the draft, because their draft last year was electric too. And it was Detroit Lions-esque, where they were like, okay, we're going to keep everyone that we drafted up until the 6th round. Yeah,
it was incredible.
And then after them, Houston Texans definitely get an A+ here. We have the Indianapolis Colts here. And they go after, sign Joe Flacco. Definitely a great backup since they lost Gardner Minshew, and then you sign Trey Sermon to replace Zach Moss. Already have Jonathan Taylor there, so I think that's a nice little pickup. And then re-signing Michael Pittman, re-sign Tyquan Lewis, and then you sign Raekwon Davis, defensive tackle there. That'll help secure the run defense. And then you have Zaire Franklin, who you signed, and then everyone else was a re-sign. A little bit disappointed. I thought they should be in the mix for someone like a Christian Wilkins or a Danielle Hunter, and seems like the Texans kind of beat them to the punch, which I want to see who I was more bullish on going into the offseason, on who made the most moves in free agency. And so far, the Texans are eating the Colts' lunch.
Yeah, the Colts bringing a lot of people back, which is nice. I'm glad they re-signed Michael Pittman. Getting Joe Flacco is a nice backup. But overall, the Texans went from being like this with the Colts to being like that. The Texans have gotten so much better. Well, the Colts, I think, have gotten mildly better. But I think it's the Texans have dominated them so far.
Yeah, and Bobby Slowick staying too is a big indicator of something special being built here. Him knowing that it's not a fluke, and the fact that 9-8 after going 3-13, 3 years in a row, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
After that, and then you go 9-8. That's your floor from here on out. Next year, you're probably looking at 13-4, 14-3 for the Houston Texans, especially because they're in the same division as those damn Jacksonville Jaguars, who I said they needed a dog in vaccination. They needed that dog in them. They needed to restore some bark, and then also they needed to sign some players who would sell some tickets. Well, first of all, we traded for Mac Jones, who was in the same draft as Trevor Lawrence. They're peers, so there's obviously going to be some beef there because every single report out of New England has said, Mac Jones, locker room, thumbs down. Not a good review for him. And then you re-sign Dearness Johnson, then friend of the show, enemy of the show, whatever you want to call him.
Enemy.
Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis, yes. You replaced Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis.
And Devin Duvernay.
3 years, $39 million. Up to $50 million in incentives. Now you have Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk as your 1 and 2. Don't love that. Devin Duvernay, fine punt returner. He's great, whatever. And then you re-signed some guys here. You got
Josh Allen. That's a big one.
Yeah, you tagged Josh Allen. You got Arik Armstead. But overall, this has been one of the most mid-off seasons of any team. Mac Jones, I don't understand why they, of all teams, were going after Mac Jones as a backup. I don't see how that's going to be beneficial for him or Trevor, or really the locker room at large. You're talking about a guy who was the 15th overall pick and the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, I think Trevor's going to be secure in his role, obviously, unless if he gets hurt. But why would you even want Mac Jones at this point?
Yeah, I feel like Mason Rudolph would have been the better fit for them if you're going to go after a backup quarterback who can step in there and be pretty solid in like a Brian Hoyer type of role. But I think the best fit for Mac Jones would have been Atlanta, where he can sit behind someone like Kirk Cousins and just learn under a veteran quarterback, where Trevor is still trying to figure out the NFL so far, where he had a good second year, his third year in the league. He had a lot of injuries there, and just that whole team was mediocre, being carried on the back of Travis Etienne and Christian Kirk, of all people. And then their defense underperformed, and Trevor Lawrence still trying to figure it out. It's like Mac Jones is not the guy. Trevor Lawrence probably needs a more of a veteran presence at backup quarterback who can help lead him through some tough situations, unlike Mac Jones, who's just going to be a whiny bitch when Trevor Lawrence has a bad game.
Well, wouldn't you think that looking in that division where either it would be Mason Rudolph, or you don't think Joe Flacco would have been a great fit for the Jaguars? A guy who's been in the league for 3,000 years now.
Yeah.
And, has the experience, has Super Bowl pedigree, has playoff pedigree, and just had the Comeback Player of the Year award. Like, for me, it feels like they should have went after Joe Flacco in this case, or even someone like an Andy Dalton who's probably sitting on his couch somewhere.
Bring back Minshew.
Or bring back Minshew if you want to. Like, I don't know. Bring in somebody who's a veteran who's seen the game. Trevor Lawrence, he's still young and has a lot of improvements to have, so I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't love the offseason. We'll see what the Jaguars do in the draft, but I'm not picking them over the Texans. I'm not picking them over the Colts. And then we'll see what the Titans do with Will Levis, because they had an interesting offseason, to say the least. So they go ahead, bring in Mason Rudolph, who will be a solid mentor for Will Levis there. And then you sign Tony Pollard, 3 years, $24 million. Not really losing too much sleep over that. I think that's a pretty decent deal for someone like Pollard.
That's a fine deal.
And then you have Calvin Ridley, 4 years, $92 million. Did you give up too much? Yes. It's guaranteed for $52 million, but Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, and you re-sign Westbrook Akine, that's not the worst wide receiver room in the league, especially you have 2 veteran guys there. Will Levis helped DeAndre Hopkins a lot more than Ryan Tannehill did. So if you can get a guy in the draft, I think the Titans offense is in pretty good shape, especially because you were able to get a center there where you signed Lloyd Cushenberg. Yeah, able to get Kenneth Murray. You got Jacoby Awuzie, who's a great corner. And then you also signed Morgan Cox there on defense as well. So I thought overall, for an offseason, the Titans did a lot better than the New England Patriots, who are a team in a similar situation than them. They kind of ate their lunch, where we re-signed Jalen Reagor, and we got Antonio Gibson, where we got Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard.
Yeah, and I think the Calvin Ridley deal, now that I see how much guaranteed it was, it's like his ceiling is going to, or his floor is going to be making about 12 to 13 million. annually, or his ceiling being 23. And if you look at Kelvin Ridley's trajectory, he is a guy that at his best, he was a top 10 receiver in the league. I don't think he'll be to that same level anymore, but you get him, you pair him with DeAndre Hopkins, and then they do have a pretty solid tight end in a Okonkwo. Now you have Tony Pollard. The offense should be a lot better. Now it's just building that offensive line for Will Levis, and I think they have a decent amount. I think they should compete for the Jags and the Colts for that second place.
Do you think they can be better than the Jaguars next year? If
Yes.
Will Levis, like, do you think he can be
Yes.
him?
I think it's possible if you get the right guy there.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the offensive coordinator from the Bengals there. You got Brian Callahan, and that offense has been really solid for them. So I think it's possible. I'm not in love with what the Jags are doing. I don't know what's in the air in Jacksonville. I don't know if it's the Duval County.
I think it's the bath salts.
Maybe it's the bath salts. Maybe it's the Urban Meyer stench that's still
Ugh.
pouring over them. But I think it's possible that they finish third. I don't think they finish second. I think the Colts are better. But I think that there's a chance they don't finish last.
Yeah, there's a chance that they don't finish last. So I think the Titans will be right there competing, and they've been really consistent over the next few years. It's all on Brian Callahan now to kind of figure it out, and let's see what they do in the draft. And I could get even more bullish on the Colts and more bearish on the Jaguars, but that's the South's free agency here. Last division we have in the AFC West. We have the Denver Broncos starting out here. You re-signed a fullback. Congratulations. You signed a position from the 90s. Good for you. And then we have Lil Jordan Humphrey re-signed.
Sounds like a rapper. Cool.
Great. You signed Malcolm Roach. No one knows who he is. You have Cody Barton, Brandon Jones, and you signed PJ Locke. Or you re-signed him. So congratulations on the Denver Broncos for getting rid of Russell Wilson, but I don't.
And they traded Jerry Jeudy too.
They traded Jerry Jeudy, but like it's not looking good. It's not looking optimistic, and it's not looking better. I think this could potentially be the worst team in the division by a mile. When you after we look 100%. At what the Chargers set themselves up for, after we look at what the Raiders set themselves up for, because if the Raiders get a better quarterback in the draft this year than the Broncos, you are screwed for the next decade.
Yep, exactly. I think the Broncos, one of the worst off seasons, honestly, of any team.
Yeah, and it's going to take them a while to recover from that $80 million in dead cap there. Yeah. And then Sean Payton's going to be safe because, like, do we really want to pay dead cap to a overrated quarterback and an overrated head coach? Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
So Broncos get an L so far for this offseason. And then the Chiefs have one of my favorite offseason additions, one of the most underrated pickups, Hollywood Brown, added to the team. Friend of the show, Hollywood Brown, underrated receiver in the league, Hollywood Brown. Him and Patrick Mahomes. If you're telling me you're replacing Kadarius Toney, who single-handedly left the Chiefs off of my top 5 towards the end of the season because he was that bad, and then you replace him with Hollywood Brown, who broke the NFL record for catches in a single game. I believe Kyler Murray threw him the ball about 24 times, and he caught it for 18 times. What do you think Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to do with this guy instead of Kadarius Toney?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice signing, especially because we saw the ascendance of Rashid Rice. Whether whoever's number one, it doesn't really matter. I think those two guys, it's good enough for their receiver core is good now. They did sign Irv Smith as well to be a backup for Kelsey. Yeah. So I think it's like a low risk, high reward sort of thing. So perfect signing for the defending champs.
Yeah, perfect signing for the defending champs. So pretty much re-signed everyone. All you really needed to do was add a more dynamic receiver to help your offense be a little bit easier than it was last year. And you went out there, you did it, and we'll see what they do in the draft. But A+ signing for the Chiefs. And the fact that you got Chris Jones back, also a W.
Yep.
And then after that, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who signed Gardner Minshew to a 2-year, $25 million deal. Love that. I think that'll be good for their culture. I know him and Max Crosby have had their exchanges in the past where Max Crosby was calling him little ass boy, and then you just see him like,
dude,
hey, dude, I don't.
Call me a little boy, dude.
He keeps calling me a little boy, man. I don't know what's up with him. So excited to see the reunion. That would kind of be a lit Hard Knocks, actually. Antonio Pierce, Max Crosby.
I'm in for that.
And then biggest signing of the offseason, though, outside of Danielle Hunter, the Texans, Christian Wilkins, 4 years, $110 million with $84 million guaranteed to pair with Max Crosby on that defensive line and the Raiders. We reacted to it on the show last week, but in love with this signing.
Yeah, I think we talked about the Broncos and what they haven't done. For the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, if he's your starter this year, it's not the end of the world. We saw how good the Colts were with him, and then you get Christian Wilkins to pair with Max Crosby, and some of the other pieces that they have on that defensive line is already pretty good. So I think they're in a good position. I think they can compete for second place in that division.
Yeah, I definitely think they can compete for second place. I'm very excited to see what the Raiders do, especially at quarterback next year. You also still need a running back because you got rid of Josh Jacobs. All you really did was re-sign Abdullah. So we'll see what they do there. But their defense was already really good last year. So really just got to beef it up on offense. And really, you don't have any holes at wide receiver. It's really just running back at this point in the offensive line.
Yeah, and they got rid of Renfro, but that's fine.
Oh, big whoop.
They can draft one.
And then the Chargers.
Last team in the AFC.
Last team in the AFC. And what they are focusing on, Jim Harbaugh is cleaning house right now, building his own team, and he wanted players that would restructure their deals. Keenan Allen ends up leaving, going to the Chicago Bears. Mike Williams ends up getting cut. That was surprising for me. And honestly, that was the one I was surprised the most by.
My Mike Williams?
Mike Williams, yeah.
Yeah.
He's still young, 7 years in the league.
Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't trade Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack. I'm glad they restructured their deal. So that defense, that's bullish for them. They did sign Punya Ford and Denzel Perriman, but this is a team where you might look at them. Maybe they haven't done that much in the offseason, but with the amount of cap that they had to deal with some of these massive contracts, we're talking about 4 of the biggest cap hits of any 4 players in the NFL at this point. With Khalil Mack, I think he's owed $40 million in cap.
Yeah, Joey.
Yeah, Joey Bosa as well. So I'm surprised they didn't go ahead and trade one of the defensive players, but you lose 2 of your receivers. You know what you have to do in the draft. They're probably going to go after a Brock Bowers, or maybe they go after a Romeo Aduze or Malik Neighbors, but they signed Gus the Bus. They got rid of Austin Eckler. So I think they've had a fine offseason for given their circumstances.
Yeah, I think they've had a fine offseason as well. And I love that they addressed the tight end position. So really, they're going to be focusing on running back and wide receiver. We know the Chargers are already great at drafting running backs, and Jim Harbaugh as well. I think he's holding his cards for someone like a Brandon Ayuk, Stephon Diggs. Would he want to play with Herbert? Probably.
And play in LA too.
He's in LA as well. So I think, and then you sign Will Disley and Hayden Hurst. So you know what you need to do in the draft right now. So I like that the Chargers addressed everything they need to do. They're like, what do we need? Keep the defense. They already made up their minds for that. And then we're going to get a new offense. So really excited to see what Jim Harbaugh does with this team.
And I actually think the Gus Edwards signing is underrated as well, because you have Isaiah Spiller, he's a fine back, a little bit of a different play style. I think the Chargers are really good drafting running backs historically. You've gone from LT to Darren Sproles to Melvin Gordon to Austin Eckler. Now you're on the next one. Will they be able to get on him? I think they will. So the Gus Edwards signing is underrated also.
Yeah, Gus Edwards is definitely going to be underrated. So very bullish on the Chargers next year. Hopefully, Jim Harbaugh can do some rituals and get rid of all the bad juju that's been haunting that franchise. But we'll see. But that's our last team in the AFC. Let's go ahead and pivot over to the NFC, where we start with the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys, where you sign Eric Kendricks. That's cool in 2016. And you sign Jordan Lewis to a 1-year deal. And then you re-sign Trent Sieg. You end up losing Tyron Smith. You let him walk. You have to pick up some new offensive linemen. And then you also pick up a sexual assault allegation with Dak Prescott. So really productive offseason, I get. So you have a lawsuit, 2 guys that were great in 2015, and you re-sign Trent Sieg, who no one knows who he is. You lose Tony Pollard. You're going to cut Michael Gallup, who everyone loves for some reason. Do not know why. And then, then you have to potentially give Dak $60 million this offseason. Not looking great in Dallas. Not looking great at all.
This is one of the few offseason grades that I'm going to give an F to. What have they done? They have gotten worse. The teams in their division have gotten better. Pretty much, actually,
way better.
No, not even one of the teams. Every single team in that division has gotten better. And then you have gotten worse. You lost your running back. They'll draft a running back. They'll probably be fine. But with all the looming contracts that they have with Micah Parsons, with CeeDee Lamb, with Dak Prescott, with everybody else, this is a team. You're starting to see the cracks in the armor. And I think that this is going to be a year where the Cowboys drastically underperform.
Yeah. No, they're definitely going to underperform because, first of all, you brought Mike McCarthy back, and everyone knows he was a fraud. The favorite coach on that staff was Dan Quinn. He's gone now. He was Micah Parsons' best friend. They exchanged Christmas gifts, gave each other teddy bears, whatever. And then he's gone now.
They even lost Kellen Moore.
They lost Kellen Moore, which they lost him a few years ago, but he was another head coach where it's like, okay, maybe it'll be different this year. Nope, it wasn't. Mike McCarthy lied again to Jerry Jones saying, I want to run the ball more. Actually, I'm going to throw the ball even more than I did under Kellen Moore because he was insecure because he thought he was someone that Jerry liked a lot, loved him like a son. And he's like, well, if I'm fired, Jerry Jones would be fine hiring Kellen Moore. So he gets rid of any potential successor there and brings in a mediocre offensive coordinator who gave Russell Wilson one of the worst years in Seattle of his career.
Yeah, the Brian Schottenheimer times. So,
yeah, but
what a mess.
What a mess. And I looked at this and I was like, wow, what a mess. I walked in here and I was like, what a mess the Cowboys are. It was like when they were telling New Orleans, like, hey, you should build protection in case of a hurricane. They're like, yeah, maybe. We'll think about it. And then city, gone.
Yep. Yeah, it's a disaster. I think that this is going to be a team. You remember when the Chargers brought back Brandon Staley after that monumental collapse against the Jaguars and how bad they were, and then inevitably they fired him mid-season?
Yeah.
I think we're going to be in for something similar with the Cowboys. Maybe they're not 5-12 bad, but can I see them being 6-11? Maybe there's an injury to Dak or one of these big players and they just drastically underperform. People start to sell out of the locker room. The locker room goes to shit. I think we're looking in for a Cowboys team that's going to drastically underperform next year.
Yeah, they're drastically going to underperform. And chat, you tell us this as well in the comments. What do you think is worse? Do you think it's worse to blow a 4-touchdown lead where you're at least up in a game? Or do you think it's worse to get railroaded at home by the 7th seed in Jordan Love? Because you're up 4 touchdowns, end up blowing it with Brandon Staley to the Jaguars, who had a better season than you. And then you lose to... Or with the Cowboys, you lose to Jordan Love, and they were at least hot, and they destroy you, and they're just a better team from start to finish. So what do you think is worse, and what do you think is more demoralizing? Blowing the lead or not even having it and CeeDee Lamb crying on the sideline?
I got to say the Cowboys, honestly, because the Chargers, you know, they were still, I think they were the 4th seed, if I'm not mistaken. I believe they were the wild card team, and they faced the Jaguars, who were the division winners. And they had a lot less expectations. Nobody expected them to go to the Super Bowl. The Cowboys, they were right there with the Niners in the mainstream media of this is one of the best teams in the AFC and NFC. And then they go out there and they lay an egg and get absolutely destroyed by the 7th seed. And I know that the Packers were a pretty good team, but they were still all 22, 23, 24 years old. You lost to a bunch of babies and you had sky-high expectations, and you crashed and burned. We had CeeDee Lamb crying on the sidelines, for Christ's sakes, and Dak Prescott did absolutely nothing. So I think the Cowboys won this way more embarrassing.
Yeah, it's way more embarrassing because we're going to get to every single other offseason that happened in your division. And starting with the New York Giants, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but yes, the Giants have had a really good offseason so far. Yeah. Because you get some backup quarterback at Drew Lock. And my main problem with the Giants is Daniel Jones. Why is he still on the team? No one knows. He's terrible at football. He's the Walt Jr. of the NFL. Instead of getting a Dodge Charger, you end up re-signing a PT Cruiser, and then everyone on the team decided they'd rather walk to school than be with Daniel Jones on that team. But other than that, you get Devin Singletary, pretty good running back, Isaiah McKenzie. You get an offensive lineman there, Andrew Marion Elamornar, and then you also get John Berman, but you also had a pretty decent defense with Bobby Okereke, and then Kevon Thibodeau really coming into his own at the end of the season, and you add Brian Burns to that. Talk about a defense that could kick some ass even when their offense is going to be horrible. I mean, they could be up to the level of a Patriots team last year where their defense kicking everybody's ass. Same with the Broncos when they had Russell Wilson in their first year. So if they can go out there, draft someone like JJ McCarthy with the 6th overall pick, you get a quarterback and someone who can step in, then you can focus on wide receiver in the draft, who you've been able to draft players like Victor Cruz in the past. Can we get someone like him to do the salsa in the end zone? And then you also sign Jalen Mills on defense. I mean, this defense is going to be really good next year. It's just, how do we get Daniel Jones as far away from the planet as possible? Maybe you can volunteer him to, they're doing like a test program on what it would be like to stay on Mars for 365 days. Maybe you volunteer Daniel Jones for that and you put him off of the planet, and then you go draft someone like JJ McCarthy. Then I'm very bullish on the Giants.
Yeah,
but it's still until January.
Yeah, and the thing is, what should have happened is you didn't sign Devin Singletary, you kept Saquon, and you let Daniel Jones walk last year. So you already lost the offseason this year because you lost it last year because you signed the wrong person. Now Saquon is on another team we'll go over in a second, but you signed Drew Lock, who can compete with him. Denny DeVito's still there, and now you have Brian Burns, which we'll talk about the Panthers and the monstrosity that they had of an offseason, but they only give up a second and a fourth for him. For Brian Burns, that's a massive fault. And then you sign him to a record-setting contract. So Giants, I wasn't going to give them a great grade because they lost Saquon, but they get Brian Burns for nothing, so it's a win.
Yeah, defensively, I think they'll be really good. I still think their offense is going to be bad, but it's going to be like a Patriots or what the Patriots were last year, what the Broncos were Russ's first year there. But with Brian Burns there, hell of a pickup, especially with Bobby Okereke. But did they have the best offseason in their division? No, because not only does the Eagles quarterback have a pulse, and not only is he good at football, but they also had D Swift last year, realized he wasn't the running back, and then they're like, okay, if we want to run the football, how about we get one of the top 3 running backs in the league and Saquon Barkley and take him, from our division rival in the New York Giants there, and then, okay, we have a secondary problem, and we have a problem with being too old, so let's go out there and get CJ Gardner-Johnson and Devin White at linebacker.
Nasty.
Are you kidding me? So overall, like, you signed like Bryce Huff at edge rusher for a 3-year, $51 million deal, but getting someone like Devin White, getting someone like CJ Gardner-Johnson, then if Jalen Carter can go out there and take that next leap, and then you can see some life from Jordan Davis, I think this is a really good move. And especially with Saquon Barkley there, you were able to re-sign Devontae Smith as well. So I think Sirianni's year there, if he doesn't do it, it's going to be his fault because you gave him all the pieces he needs to succeed right now. So Kellen Moore is going to have some toys to play with. And so will Wink Martindale on defense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I think there's a chance that Saquon could have a Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco level production with that 3-year deal. You're paying him a bunch of money, and he is still relatively young. He's got relatively fresh legs. He's 27 at this point. And I think that with that offensive line, I know it's going to take a step back because you lose Jason Kelsey, but they can still have an elite offensive line with having A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts with that tush push. That's going to be absolutely ridiculous. I mean, talking about a tush push with Jalen Hurts, who can squat 600 pounds, and Saquon Barkley, who can squat 600 pounds. You're going to have 1,200 pounds of force right there.
1,200? And then also, there's a difference between worrying about Jalen Hurts with the tush push, and then you do the fake end around to someone like Boston Scott or D Swift to, they may do the tush push and then fake it and then give it to Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
2 very different situations. And then also, this is a Philadelphia team. They're not going to have to wear down Saquon Barkley. So this is their move where the San Francisco 49ers are like, okay, mediocre running back, insert Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, absolute monster. And it's hilarious that he goes in division. After they refuse to pay him year after year. So New York fans are upset because he left, but honestly, he did the right thing.
He was your entire offense, and you didn't give him shit. Oh, we're going to pay Daniel Jones instead. I would have gone to the same division too, so I can also spit on Daniel Jones every time I see him.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's literally the same as the Breaking Bad comparison of the PT Cruiser and the Dodge Charger. Yeah. It's literally the exact same comparison, and you signed the PT Cruiser instead of the Dodge Charger. Now everyone in the Giants wants to walk to school.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be on the bus with Daniel Jones. But that's one team in the division that did better. Another team that did pretty good, but maybe signed a little too many old players here. We got the Washington, change your name, please, Commanders. And they got Marcus Mariota. Pretty good backup for Drake May coming in there.
Sure.
Austin Eckler.
Yeah, Austin Eckler. I'm happy that they signed him because I think he'll complement with Brian Robinson fine, but we're going to go over the losers of free agency. Austin Eckler is definitely the biggest loser in free agency. As far as the running back market, we had Saquon who got paid. We had Joe Mixon who got paid. We had all these other running backs who got paid. And then he took a very small deal in relation to what he was getting offered before the season. And you're going to the Commanders where you're going to be splitting carries with Brian Robinson. So I think for Austin Eckler, who's now entering age 30, I don't love it for him, but I'm happy that he got some money and that the Commanders, they have a complimentary piece now.
Yeah, and I think Brian Robinson is still really good there. So I think him and Eckler will pal well together. And then you went out there, you signed Zach Ertz, another old player there, which is kind of where my trepidation was in this team. But you did sign 2 offensive linemen. You got Nick Algoretti, and then you got Tyler Beidaz there, so that's good. And then signed Dorian Armstrong, and you sign Colleen Farrell to a deal, and then you also get Dante Fowler, another old player. See a trend yet? Then you get Effie Obada, Frankie Louvu, though I
Nice
really
signing.
like.
Really nice signing.
Bobby Wagner, another old player, and then congrats, you signed Brandon McManus, who will blow a game for you, and then Michael Davis and Jeremy Chin. So it's like you got a lot of good veteran presence, and I like that they went out there and spend money. It may just be a little too old, but I think that'll help. If you hit on your draft, it'll pan out beautifully. But if you miss on your draft, this is going to be an absolute disaster, and you set yourself up to become a nursing home for the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that you're looking at people who are on their last deal, like Bobby Wagner, who was contemplating retirement. We're talking about Austin Eckler. This is probably his last big deal. So
even Dante Fowler, like how long have we been saying his name for?
Yeah, Dante Fowler, another guy who's super old. So, I mean, I think they're in a better position than they were before the offseason now. But let's see what they do in the draft.
Yeah, we will say, though, they did better than the Dallas Cowboys. I would say you probably did better than the Giants because Frankie Louvu was awesome for the Panthers. But yeah, for me, it's like them and the Giants. It's a toss-up depending on the draft. But
Eagles won that division for
Eagles definitely won that. And then we go to the North in the NFC. Yes, the North, where it's very cold up there in Chicago, who signed Brett Rippon. I guess that's okay.
Backup.
D Swift, what will he do for the first 6 weeks of the season? Because we know after that, not much, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I like it for D Swift. He got some good money, but I mean, this is a team that's probably going to draft a running back as well, and I don't think he's going to stay there the full 3 years.
But Keenan Allen,
he's a fine piece. I mean, yeah, and then Keenan Allen. Getting Keenan Allen for a 4th-round pick, you pair him with DJ Moore. You have the luxury, dare I say it, with Cole Kmet. So their offensive line, as they built it, they got Ryan Bates. And they got Coleman Shelton, offensive lineman. They signed a bunch of offensive linemen, actually.
Yeah. Jake Curran, Matt Pryor. Then you signed Gerald Everett, who's a nice complimentary piece when you have a luxury in Cole Kmet, 6'6", 260 pounds. We all know what he's about. Then you have Jalen Johnson, signed Kevin Byard as another old safety, but your defense started to come on really strong last year. Then you're able to get Jonathan Owens as well, and then you get Jake Martin at the defensive end. So I think your defense is good, and now that you have DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and Gerald Everett, D Swift, if you hit on a receiver in the draft, Chicago Bears will be really good if Caleb Williams isn't a bust.
Yeah, if Caleb Williams is everything they say he is, then this is going to be a really good team who I think will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely think they'll make the playoffs. So congrats to the Chicago Bears. Definitely a strong offseason. You didn't like blow anyone away, but you got Keenan Allen because the Patriots didn't want to give up a 4th-round pick. Are you fucking kidding me? And then you got some nice players on the offensive line.
Yeah, and D Swift's a nice piece too. So I like what they've done.
Yeah, definitely. And then the Detroit Lions, they were very busy this offseason, re-signing Donovan Peoples-Jones. Then you signed Graham Glasgow to replace Taylor Decker. And I think Taylor Decker was involved in that play versus the Cowboys, I believe.
That was the one where he allegedly didn't report. So that's good.
And then they got Dan Skipper on the offensive line as well. Then you sign Marcus Davenport at the edge. That's solid. DJ Reader, another solid defensive lineman. And then you get Jalen Reeves, Maben. You acquire Carlton Davis at corner. Solid corner for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you get Amik Robinson. And then you also re-sign Emmanuel Mosley. So you get 3 corners, a kick-ass defensive lineman, another edge rusher. And then you beef up on the offensive line. And this is a team has proven under Dan Campbell that they're really good at drafting. So I think the Detroit Lions set themselves up beautifully to contend and stay at the top of that division.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is bolstering up that defensive line because for a long time, part of the season was it was either Aiden Hutchinson or bust. Now you have some nice players there who can complement him, add some more pressure to that line. And then you also kept your secondary intact as well. You
Yeah.
lost CJ Gardner Johnson, but you replaced him with Carlton Davis, who's a little bit younger. So I like the move. I think they've done a good job.
Yeah, and you really only need a draft defense. Like, tell me a position on offense that they need to bolster up.
Yeah,
It's going
because
to be the first season Jamison Williams plays a full year.
yeah, exactly. And then you lost some offensive linemen, but you replaced them with also good offensive linemen. So I think they're in a great spot.
Yeah, I think they're in a great spot. And I think the Lions and the Packers, oddly enough, probably have both could say that they have the best running back duo in the league because the Packers saw what the Detroit Lions did last year and they're like, okay, we'll do you one better. We'll get Josh Jacobs and AJ Dillon. Yes, the farm simulator himself is returning. Two of the most physical running backs in the league.
Yeah.
So they're going to wear a lot of teams down. Then you sign Tyler Davis, re-signs there at tight end. And then you resign another corner there, and then you sign Xavier McKinney, but you beef up the running back position. Your offense is already really good, and the Packers can draft on defense. I mean, you didn't do too much, but I think you did enough to really compete next year.
Yeah, you got younger at running back. You actually spent money, which is something the Packers never do. So you're breaking the mold. You're still a young team, and I think the way that the rest of the team's ascending, getting a little bit younger at running back and then bolstering up, signing somebody on defense, it's going to be a good team.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good team. And then for the Vikings, it really doesn't matter. You sign Aaron Jones, but you're in a full rebuild right now. So until we see what you do, I really don't think the Vikings matter a lot. The only thing that stands out is Sam Darnold. And there's just going to be certain people in the media that will be like, Sam Darnold has weapons. Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Trent Sherfield.
He's going to be...
He's going to be really good.
TJ Hawkinson, big physical tight end.
So do you think because the Vikings don't have necessarily a high draft pick, do you think they could actually run it this year with Sam Darnold?
I hope not. I actually like Aaron Jones going there because I think he's going to have that revenge mentality. And they did also sign some players on defense as well. So they're going to be a really good bad team, I think. A team that's going to be any given week, but I also think that they're going to finish probably last in that division.
Yeah, I think they could have some absolute offensive explosions, though, because now you have Addison, you still have TJ Hawkinson at tight end, and you have Justin Jefferson, so it's like...
Who wants to get paid?
Who wants to get paid? So it's like, if you have him on the team and he doesn't inevitably get traded to the Bengals, I think that could be one of the teams that, at the end of the year, they're going to ruin someone's playoff chances.
Yeah, I think they're gonna be frisky, but I think they traded with the Texans, so I have 2 first-round picks now.
Yeah.
So I think they're gonna trade up and go after somebody in the draft. But we'll see as we go over the draft eventually.
Yeah, potentially Bosif Nix, and then we have the South now. Yes, we made it to warm weather out of the freezing cold NFC North, and we start with the Atlanta Falcons, who signed Kirk Cousins. Even Cam Newton was a little bitter about the signing with how much money he got. He was like, I can't believe a guy with only one playoff win got $180 million. I'm like, well, that's called when you can actually still throw a football and run an offense at this age in your career. Not going to be a problem in the locker room, and then have a track record of being successful for a team that hasn't really had the guy since Matt Ryan. There aren't any good quarterbacks in free agency outside of Kirk Cousins, and they're not high enough where they could give up some capital to move up in the draft, and they kind of already have a playoff-ready team. That's just what happens, and I was surprised that they actually went out there and done it. So Kirk Cousins, 4 years, $180 million, and then you go right out there, get Ray McLeod, Rondell Moore, who you acquire with a trade from the Cardinals.
Yeah, and swapping Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, and then with swapping Desmond Ridder, and then I know you're not a huge fan of Darnell Mooney, but I think he's fine. And then you signed tight end Charlie Warner, so you didn't sign too many big players on defense, but overall, you got your quarterback. That's what you needed.
You got your quarterback, and for the people who are saying it's a bad signing, it's front loaded. He's getting $90 million in his first 2 years, and then it's $100 million guaranteed. So you're really committing 2 years to Kirk Cousins. You can still draft a quarterback in the later rounds. And then as you move into the rest of your team, You have Bijan, you have Drake London. Maybe you draft a wide receiver in this draft as well, which you are notoriously good at doing. So I think that they're in a good spot, and I think that they should be the favorites to win the division this upcoming year.
Yeah, they should definitely be the favorites because for the people saying that this is a bad signing, first of all, look at every single other team in that division and tell me that they're in a better situation right now
No,
than the Atlanta
not a single
Falcons.
team.
And then also tell me who else they're going to get in free agency or trade for. Oh, that's nobody. And then is Kirk Cousins better than Russ? Yeah, at this point in his career. And then what draft pick are you getting a top quarterback or a franchise guy in the NFL draft this year unless you get lucky? Nobody. So they did the best they could.
They did the best they could, and they elevated their window because right then they were 7-10. Their quarterback play was the worst, and if they had good quarterback play, they probably would have been 10-7. They probably would have won that division. You got there, you pay Kirk Cousins, you front load the contract. I don't see any issues with Kirk Cousins being signed there. So
No.
they made the right thing.
Yeah, I don't see any issues. And then also, this is a team that's 7-10, 7-10, and then the Bucks won the division, being 9-8, and kind of a bad football team all year round. They made it
Yeah.
to the divisional round, but that's because they played the Philadelphia Eagles at their worst there. So great job for the Atlanta Falcons. Actually, let's save this team for the last. We'll come back. We'll come back to you.
The Saints did nothing. They signed Nate Peterman, who I honestly thought was in the UFL at this point, but I guess not. Cedric Wilson on a 2-year deal. You like that? Meh. We agreed to Demario Davis coming back. We got Willie Gay, took him from the Chiefs.
Tyrann Mathieu signed.
And then they re-signed Tyrann Mathieu.
Then biggest news, cutting Michael Thomas.
Yeah, cutting Michael Thomas. They're in cap hell, but somehow they managed to make it under the cap somehow, some way. Yeah, the Saints, they're the third best team in that division.
Congrats, Saints. And this is another team, really doesn't matter. Somehow you're less interesting than the Minnesota Vikings.
That's impressive.
Okay. And then your coach is a Karen as well. And then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who lost some firepower. Shaq Barrett is gone. Devin White is gone now, so you lose 2 key running backs, so have to do some work in the draft there. But you did get a deal done with Baker Mayfield, re-signs 3 years, $100 million. Definitely a very serviceable deal for someone like Baker Mayfield. You were saying it's going to be something like Geno Smith, and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And then you got Chase Edmonds. Re-signing Mike Evans was huge. And then, let me see. You signed Bryce Hall, and then you signed Jordan Whitehead to a deal, and then Antoine Winfield Jr. gets the non-exclusive tag, which I don't get because he's the best player in your secondary at this point. So why don't you just pay him? He's one of the best players at his position in the league.
Yeah. I mean, after they signed Baker and Mike, they might not have the cap for it, but I think that what I was worried about them going into the offseason, they were able to keep Baker and they were able to keep Mike Evans. So I think they're in a good spot overall. And then we ended with Tepperville Panthers. What can we say that they did? Well, they put a bunch of money on the offensive line, which they desperately needed because they had literally the worst offensive line in football. Bryce Young was sacked 65 times this year, which was nearly a record. They got a receiver. They got Deontay Johnson for nearly nothing. Everyone on Twitter loves this trade. What I can say to this trade is death to Deontay because he is gone now. I'm sorry. Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson. I mean, Deontay Johnson's a fine receiver, but going from Pittsburgh, where he had 0 touchdowns last year and 0 touchdowns the year before, to going to Tepperville, I think it's the end of Deontay Johnson's career, sadly.
Yeah, and Hayden Hurst didn't even want to stay. He was like, nah, I'm out. I'm on the greener and brighter pastures there. And then this has been the thing with the Carolina Panthers where you're literally making Luke Combs cry on the Pat McAfee show where he comes out there. He's like, I don't know what we're doing. He's going off because they're like, okay, we had a really great defense last year, and their defense was actually pretty good. And you know why they had a really good defense last year? Brian Burns, who you could have gotten 2 firsts for, and then that would have really helped. What'd you get back for Brian Burns this time? Not 2 first-round picks from the Giants, and then you also could have re-signed or signed and trade Frankie Louvu. You're like, no. I am all set with Frankie Louvu, and he was probably all set with you because you've seen mistake after mistake after mistake, and then you also let Christian McCaffrey go, and then the offensive line, usually when people think of signing really good offensive linemen. You know what you need to fix? The left tackle position, the right tackle position, the guys who actually guard the edge. And you did get two good offensive guards, but you still don't have a good left tackle. You still don't have a good right tackle. And we'll see how these contracts pan out. But knowing David Tepper, probably not that good. And then you trade for Deontay Johnson, and Deontay Johnson was fine in Pittsburgh. He was pretty okay. Is he going to be the number one guy anywhere? No, not really.
Okay, ask me this. When it comes to Steelers receivers, how many times can you count where they leave Pittsburgh and they fall off a cliff? I can think of a prime example right now. How about, I don't know, Juju Smith-Schuster? How about Chase Claypool? How about Santonio Holmes? How about Mike Wallace? How about name a bunch of them? There's a bunch of them. And I think that that's going to be the case in this situation as well.
Yeah, the only ones that like really left, Hines Ward stayed there his whole career, but AB had a good year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Emmanuel Sanders was definitely serviceable for the Denver Broncos when they had him, but was he the guy there? No. And Emmanuel Sanders was good for the San Francisco 49ers, but you're right. The Pittsburgh Steelers are really good at drafting and developing wide receivers, but someone like Deontay Johnson does feel like someone like a Mike Wallace leaving, someone like a Chase Claypool leaving, where he's definitely better than those guys, but in Carolina with Bryce Young, with
that whole situation.
That whole situation is a mess here.
See, I got bored one night over the past week, and I wanted to accumulate because they've made a lot of moves, obviously, right? They traded for Bryce Young, and they traded Brian Burns. They traded Tristan McCaffrey. They basically traded the whole identity of the Panthers at this point. And this is what they got in return, right? So the Panthers traded the number one overall pick, which will inevitably be Caleb Williams. They traded Christian McCaffrey, who's arguably the greatest running back of our time. DJ Moore, who's number one for Chicago. And then not one, not two, 3 first-round picks, and a 2023 second-round pick. And what did they get in return for giving up that massive load? Several first-round picks, obviously. Greatness ahead? No. 1 year rental with Brian Burns, which could have been 2 first-round picks. Instead, they got 1 second-round pick. Bryce Young, who is 5'10". They got a poorly rated linebacker, DJ Johnson, who is the 125th rated edge rusher, and 2 round 5 picks for a Hall of Fame running back in Christian McCaffrey, for Brian Burns, who's one of the best defensive players in the league, and for Caleb Williams, who is the highly graded prospect since Trevor Lawrence, and a number of other picks in return. So
not good.
Tepperville is Tortureville at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you should have just sacrificed Sam Darnold again this year and kept him on the team and just sucked. I mean, the fact that you gave up Caleb Williams to trade away DJ Moore is mind-blowing to me. I don't even understand how it works, because every time I think of it, I'm like, no, that couldn't be the trade. That sounds too stupid. And then I go back and I'm like, oh, wait, that was the trade. And like, even if you don't get Caleb Williams, you still have the pick there. So you can trade him for, I don't know, T. Higgins, first round pick there, and then get some more capital from the Bengals if they want to get the first round pick, or a team who needs a quarterback who would give up everything to get that first round pick. So it's been an absolute nightmare in Carolina, and it's not going to get better until David Tepper stops being involved with decision making, because clearly
he has no idea what he's
doing. He was good at what you do in his hedge fund business. I haven't looked in to see if he's a nepo baby or not, but he kind of acts like it when he's a owner who's getting involved, messing up his franchise. And I don't care if Pat McAfee's like, oh, he seems like he wants to win because he makes all these aggressive moves. Well, every time he makes an aggressive move, he messes up. And then when he's like, oh, I want to be aggressive, I want to keep these players on my team, he absolutely shoots himself in the foot. Because if this is a team that wants to go out there and win and be aggressive, you'd have listened to us like the Baltimore Ravens did when they signed Derrick Henry and not hired Frank Reich to be your head coach, because we said absolutely not to that. We said he would be fired in the middle of the season, and that's exactly what happened. And as soon as he leaves, the Colts turn into an amazing football team and fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. What a nightmare for them. And then we have the last division to go over in the NFL, which is just the NFC West. We have the Arizona Cardinals, who they traded for Desmond Ridder, friend of the show, giving up Rondale Moore, which means they'll probably draft a wide receiver. They signed DJ Dallas, steal him from the Seahawks. Chris Moore, A lot of small signings here. They got a couple of players on defense, but
Jonah Williams, yeah, on offensive tackle there. So that will be a good pickup. Then you get Justin Jones. You sign a linebacker in Tonga here. You have Mac Wilson who's signed there. You signed Sean Murphy Bunting, which is a good signing. So got some good players on your defense. Re-signed a lot of people, but nothing that really jumps off your screen. I like what Murph from Impractical Jokers did last year, but it's really going to come down to the draft. What do they do? And can Kyler Murray stay healthy and not get hurt this year and actually watch film? So we'll see if that happens. But overall, it's okay.
it's
okay.
fine. Underwhelming. I'd probably give it a C.
And then we have the Los Angeles Rams who signed porn star Jimmy, so that's cool. And then you re-signed Demarcus Robinson at wide receiver. You get Cody Parkinson's disease. You have Kevin Dotson. You get Jonah Jackson, steal him away from the Detroit Lions. What a traitor he is. Will never be a friend of the show again. And then you have Darius Williams who gets signed at corner. And then you signed Carmen Coral at safety. So nothing really jumps off your screen. You get some depth on your offensive line, a little bit of secondary help, and then you have a really solid backup for Matthew Stafford. Jimmy Garoppolo not going to be looking to start this year, so he's going to be good in his role. And then Sean McVay, I think, if Stafford gets hurt, can definitely coach Jimmy Garoppolo enough for them to be a formidable force. But really, the biggest news for them was Aaron Donald, 32 years old, one of the best defensive players in the league,
All time.
the best defensive tackle of our generation, has retired.
Yeah, 10 years in the league, 9-time All-Pro, all-time Pro Bowl as well. I mean, we're talking about all-time great defensive players. You can put him on that all-time defensive roster, and he's right up there with some of the best. 112 sacks all-time. Like, this was a all-time great that we just lost, and 10 years in the league. Where do you say he goes as far as like our generation for like top defensive players?
I think he's right up there with anyone. I would say someone like Ray Lewis would maybe be a little bit more iconic, but there was a stretch of time where Aaron Donald for 5 years was the most dominant defensive player in the league. The fact that he is a defensive tackle who is pressuring the quarterback that much, you can put him on the edge. I would say he's right up there, probably top 5. I'd really have to take a look at those players and think about it a little bit more deeply, but he was even more dynamic than Chris Jones was at the peak of his powers, and Chris Jones is really dynamic. So as far as defensive tackles, probably the best. Probably the best. Like comparing him to, you can be like, oh, this linebacker, potentially someone like Luke Kuechly, someone like TJ Watt, but Aaron Donald, as far as a defensive tackle, definitely has to be the best of the 2010s and into the 2020s there. So one of the most dominant players in the league, and I don't think there will be a quarterback that will miss him at all.
No,
Kyler Murray immediately tweeting, thank God I don't have to deal with Aaron Donald anymore.
Yeah.
But kind of a big loss for the Rams. Do you think he was kind of holding their defense together? I know their defense was really good with a lot of no-name guys who a lot of people didn't really know who they were. Do you think their defense is going to be able to recover from this, or do you think the Rams may potentially be a candidate to take a step back this year, especially with Stafford a year older, who was already thinking about retirement last year? Because you had Nakua, Cooper Kupp's going to be a year older, you had Kyron Williams come on, but it could be one of those situations where a team makes the playoffs and everyone thinks they're going to take another step, and then they're like, actually, we're going to take a little bit of a step back.
Well, see, they lose Aaron Donald, who's the identity of the defense, and then you also lose your defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris, which everyone in that locker room loved. So losing those two guys, I think, is enough for them to take a little bit of a step back, especially on defense, because they didn't really have a lot of pressure outside of Aaron Donald. So I'll wait till the draft to know for sure, but I think that they're bound to take a step back, especially with some of the other teams ascending as well.
Yeah, definitely. So Rams got a little bit to figure out in the draft, especially defensively. Offense, obviously going to be awesome for them. But we have the San Francisco 49ers, defending Super Bowl losers. We have Brandon Allen. Wow. You signed a useless cornstalk. Might as well make him a scarecrow for your practice organization. Then you re-sign Chris Conley at receiver, re-sign John Feliciano on the offensive line. Then you sign Colton Kivitz there. You sign Leonard Floyd. That's a very nice pickup on the edge. And then you also sign Yatir Gross-Matos. You acquired Malik Collins from the Houston Texans on the defensive side. Then you signed Jordan Elliott, Kevin Gates, Devondre Campbell, Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, and then also Isaiah Yindom. So not too many moves, but you did get some nice pieces on defense to replace the Chase Youngs of the world. And then you have a useless backup quarterback that you signed.
Yeah, I mean, nothing really moves the needle for me, so they're still going to be one of the best teams. So I'm going to give it a C.
Yeah, what are you supposed to add?
Yeah, what can you add
Yeah.
at this point? So,
And then we have the Seahawks, who went out there, friend of the show, Sam Howell, acquire him in a trade. You basically replaced Drew Lock with Sam Howell, so that's a W in my book. Maybe he can sit behind Geno Smith and then learn from him a little bit there. I don't think he was really ready to play in the NFL, but maybe you give him a year or two. Maybe he can be good.
yeah, I think Sam Howell, I mean, sitting behind Geno Smith, and then maybe at the end of the season, you come on and he plays a little bit because when he was playing at his best, he looked pretty good, but the mistakes he's got to cut down. But for the Seahawks, they don't give up much for him. And I think there's enough there where there's a little bit of optimism, see where he goes. They have plenty of weapons there. They re-signed Noah Fant. They got in Ferrera Brown.
Yeah.
So I think he's a guy, maybe give him some time behind Geno Smith and then see what he can do at the end of the season if you guys are out of the playoff contention and see what he has because he's got enough there. You can see flashes a little bit.
Yeah, you can definitely see flashes. So we'll see how Sam Howell does. And then you get Farrell Brown, and then you signed George Fant to a deal on the offensive side. Then you also signed Nick Harris. So a couple offensive linemen. Resign Leonard Williams was definitely a big priority for you. Then you have Jerome Baker, Tyrell Dodson, re-sign Artie Burns, and then you sign Krishan Jenkins. So definitely some good signing at linebacker, and then you add some depth in your secondary. So kind of a so-so offseason for the Seattle Seahawks, but you added some depth and you filled some holes at linebacker in the secondary, which you needed to plug up there. So we'll see what happens with the Seattle Seahawks, but overall, just pretty okay, which leads us into the biggest winners and the biggest losers according to the Brickyard Podcast. I turned on the Brickyard Podcast and they were like, wow, what a big loser that team was. But we like to start it. Should we just go and rip the teams right away, or should we start a little bit positive because we have a bunch of negativity coming up with our next few segments?
Yeah, you know what? Let's be positive first. I'm going to hold off on the dark horse, the most obvious winner, because, I mean, you are bearing their skin today.
Yeah.
But for winners, I'm actually going to put, we'll put the Eagles here. That's the obvious one. They got Saquon Barkley. They replaced DeAndre Swift with Saquon. He gets paid finally. And with that offensive line, with the weapons there, with the amount of potential that the Eagles have, as long as they don't fall flat on their face like they did last year for the second half of the season, then this team should be right in the mix with the 49ers, with a team like the Lions, like everybody else, the Packers as well. So I think making that big addition as well, I think that they're going to be in a great position. I'm not going to mention the obvious one here because you have that next one there. All the moves that this next team had.
Yeah, the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud, the Stroud boys themselves, went out there and they went out and signed Danielle Hunter on the edge, who was top 5 in sacks, defensive player of the year candidate. And then you pair him with Will Anderson Jr., who was right up there with TJ Watt and Micah Parsons as far as pressure rate percentage. At one point, he was leading the league. He was in the playoffs with a hurt ankle, still out there making plays. And then they open up that bankroll. You're signing players on the defensive side. They basically signed an entirely new defense. So now all they need to do is focus on the offensive side of the ball in the draft. And you already have some nice pieces to go along with CJ Stroud there. You went ahead and you re-signed your tight end on offense and you acquired Joe Mixon. So now you can kind of figure out Joe Mixon, Damian Pierce, maybe you draft a running back, but you can focus on the offensive line in the draft. You can focus on adding another receiver to go along with Tank Bell on offense. So as far as the Texans, you're able to open up that bankroll, spread it around, unlike another team in your division who had even more cap space, but they missed out on Danielle Hunter, missed out on some other key signings that you were able to steal away from the Indianapolis Colts, steal away from the Titans, and steal away from the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the fact that they were able to spend their money even better than those teams, set themselves up for one of the greatest runs in NFL history coming to you in the 2025 NFL playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another winner of mine, this is kind of a cheat because it's 4 teams, but I'm going to say the AFC North. The AFC North, which is one of the best divisions already in the NFL. The Ravens got Derrick Henry. The Bengals, they bolstered up their team as well. They got Zach Moss, which I think is going to help them a lot. Moving on from Joe Mixon, getting some of the older people out of there. They got Geno Stone as well. And then also we had the Steelers getting off of Kenny Pickett. He wasn't working out. And unlike a lot of teams where they're going to try to feel it out, cut their ties with him after 2 years, didn't waste around. And then they got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who are both low risk, high return kind of players, which is why the Steelers are historically as great as they are. And then also getting Patrick Queen. And then for the Browns, they went out and got their franchise guy in Jameis Winston. So it worked out well for them.
Yeah, the Browns also got their franchise guy, Jameis Winston. You thought you could just slip that in there and we wouldn't notice? He's not the franchise guy for them. We're not going to be out here eating W's. What he will be doing is rapping to players on the sideline, getting everyone hyped up for the game. But yeah, right. I agree with you because I was thinking, like, I want to add the Steelers. I want to add the Ravens. I want to add the Bengals. So the fact that you added that AFC North, definitely glad that you did that because I feel like all of those teams did win this offseason. So congratulations to the AFC North. And then my team I'm going to go with was a team that I wasn't very optimistic on going into the offseason just because they had a lot of cap issues. What are they going to do with Tua? But the Miami Dolphins, you lose Christian Wilkins, but you pretty much sign an entire defense on your end. And defense was your weakness last year, but you're able to go out there, get Neville Gilmore, sign Jonathan Harris, you get Benito Jones, you get Jordan Brooks, you get Anthony Walker, you get Kendall Fuller, you resign Nick Needham, and then you get Jordan Poyer in your secondary, who's still an excellent player, and then you add some running back depth. You get Jonnu Smith at tight end just for some depth there, and then you sign Jack Driscoll, re-sign Robert Jones, re-sign Isaiah Wynn on the offensive line, then you sign Aaron Brewer, and you get Shaq Barrett, and you still have Jalen Ramsey. You still have Melvin Gordon, who's coming back for you on defense. You still have Bradley Chubb, who's coming back. And then you fill in all of those holes around them. And you have a draft when you don't need to focus on stop focusing on offense because you don't need anymore. You have Tyreek Hill. You have Jalen Waddle there. And then you have Devon A-Train, who's coming out of the field in the backfield. Really, all you need on offense is a quarterback. But yeah, go ahead. Draft some more players on defense. So I think surprisingly a winner of free agency was the Miami Dolphins just because I had no optimism for them at all, but ended up doing a fantastic job. Now they'll have a new defensive coordinator as well. So I'm actually bullish on the Dolphins.
Yeah. Now I think it's time we get negative. We talk about the teams. We talked about the winners, whether it be the Texans, the Dolphins, the AFC North at large. Some of the losers, and I think the obvious one in here is the Dallas Cowboys. Not only did everybody in your division get better, with the Giants getting Brian Burns, with the Eagles getting Saquon, and the Commanders basically filling out their defense with Frankie Louvu and some of the other guys, signing Austin Eckler as well. But then also, you lost Tyron Smith, who is a historically great tackle for you, probably a top 5 tackle of all time. And then you had all these allegations happening with Dak. You got to figure out who to sign. And you took a step back. You lost some receiver depth with Michael Gallup as well. This is a team that one of the only teams in the NFL who didn't really sign any major people. The Cowboys, biggest loser, especially after what we saw this past playoff performance or lack thereof. This is a team, as I mentioned, I think they're going to be one of the most disappointing teams next year, and this offseason is just the beginning of it.
Yeah, it's not only that. You go through the coaching staff, and you're like, oh, Dan Quinn is gone. Everyone's favorite coach on that roster and on the staff there. And then you brought back Mike McCarthy. It's like, what were you thinking? You brought back Mike McCarthy, of all people, who the Packers said was too outdated. If Green Bay is saying this guy is too outdated for the modern day NFL, what the fuck were you thinking, first of all, when you signed him, and then you brought him back after losing 48-16 to the team he previously faced, and then you're also going to face the Packers year in and year out in the playoffs, and no head coach has ever beat a team that he previously coached for in the playoffs and went on to win a Super Bowl. It's like, what were you thinking, first of all, there? And then you have Dak Prescott, who picks up an allegation. We're not going to talk about that because we don't have all the facts. I am not a legal expert. And, you know, It's Dak Prescott, so we'll see what happens. I don't know if she's right. I don't know if he's right. I don't know if he's wrong. Not really my wheelhouse there. But then you get rid of Michael Gallup as well, who's going to be a loss. You lose some wide receiver depth. So you are screwed as far as cap wise, but a team who wasn't screwed as far as the cap and did absolutely nothing. The New England Patriots were like, it's Belichick. He's the problem. It's not me. And then you have this whole dynasty series, which Patriots fans are like, they're trying to smear a franchise and they're trying to destroy our family name with the dynasty on Apple TV. I haven't watched it yet, but a lot of Patriots fans not happy about it, especially the people on the radio who talk about the team. And then what happens again? You pinch pennies and miss out on a premier wide receiver, not once, but twice to the same fucking team. The same team, the Titans, 2 years in a row, take away your wide receiver. They take Mike Vrabel away from you, who should have been Bill Belichick's successor. And then you hire a new head coach there, and then you re-sign Hunter Henry is your big re-signing, and then you bring back Jalen Reagor. Like, how are you supposed to get excited about this team? It's not only do you still need a wide receiver, not only do you know this team can't draft a wide receiver, but you also need a new quarterback on this team. So now with that third round pick, you're even more exponentially screwed, because if you're able to bring in someone like Calvin Ridley and then pick up a good second round wide receiver, now you're like, okay, well, we can't draft wide receivers. So if we take a quarterback, we could miss at the third overall pick, because that's a very iffy position to take a quarterback at in the top three, because usually one or two out of the three quarterbacks is a bust historically. And then also, we can't draft wide receivers historically. What the hell are we doing here in New England? Because you had you had one of the biggest pocketbooks you could have opened up, and now all the stuff about Bill Belichick not wanting to spend money. It's like, okay, no, it's not Bill Belichick who didn't want to spend money. He had to deal with Robert Kraft now, who didn't want to spend money.
Yeah, and after seeing those report cards too and some of the reactions from there, I don't know. I'm not liking what they're doing. They also aren't changing the culture, which is something that when you get rid of a head coach, you want to do.
Yeah.
You're still doing the same old Patriots things. I'm not in love with it. At this point, I'm leaning sign and draft Marvin Harrison with that third overall pick. At least then he's the only surefire bet wide receiver in that draft, and you can get him at 3. At this point, just get Marvin Harrison and build around him at that point.
Is there such thing as a surefire bet with the Patriots, though? Like, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. But this guy, he's got the DNA. He looks the best. He's the best prospect since Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
He's the only one where I'm like, I don't think they can somehow screw this up, unless if they're actually cursed and the first play he tears his ACL. That's the only way. And God, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But that's my only bet there. At this point, don't ruin another quarterback's life. Just let him go.
Yeah. I would rather see Marvin Harrison with Kyler Murray, but that's just me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I pray to God he doesn't go to the Patriots just for the sake of his career. But let's each do another team here.
My number one loser outside of this team. This one I feel bad for because they were in absolute cap hell, but they lost basically their entire defense, and I don't know how they recover in the draft here. The Bills. The poor Bills. I mean, this is a team, they're franchise, their fans, they love them so hard. They go through tables for them, literally, but losing Tre'Davious White, losing Jordan Poyer, losing friend of the show Gabe Davis as well. I mean, those are some tough shoes to fill. So I definitely think that they will be taking a step back next year, especially with the Dolphins maintaining themselves and the Jets getting Aaron Rodgers back. I think the Bills have a chance to finish third in that division.
Yeah, the Bills definitely have a chance to finish third in that division, unless the CIA doesn't have a great track record with Kennedy, so we could potentially see President Rogers if he gets elected there. But I'm gonna go with my team here, the Denver Broncos. Because you screwed yourselves royally. Because anytime someone does something in the NFL and it works, everyone's like, oh, I want to try doing that. And then we saw that materialize itself with Russell Wilson with Deshaun Watson. They're like, all you need to do is trade for a quarterback, and then you'll automatically go there and win the Super Bowl if you have a team in place. Well, what the Broncos didn't realize is they didn't have the team in place because their wide receivers were Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, who were just mediocre. They were fine. Cortland Sutton is a very, 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 probably the best 2 you could get. Should he be your number 1 on a Super Bowl team? Absolutely not. And then with Russell Wilson's contract, you are absolutely screwed as far as the cap. And then you have to go out there, draft a quarterback this year, which you are really not in a position to do, and go out there and get a great quarterback. And then just the arrogance of Sean Payton when he first came in there, the way he was running it like a mafia organization, taking any chance he could get to undermine Russell Wilson was like, I get it. You don't like Russell Wilson. We all get that. The fact that he forced the ultimatum on him, they're basically trying to save money, and he was like, I would be shocked if we don't make the playoffs this year. Really? You would be shocked if you don't make the playoffs this year, and then you're giving players ultimatums to help yourselves miss the playoffs? And then you're talking about how we shouldn't start rebuilding a team by tanking. I don't believe in that, but I want Russell Wilson to sit on the bench to save money. Excuse me, because Russell Wilson is still better than Jarrett Stidham. We know that for sure.
That is true.
So the fact that you're like, oh, we don't tank, but unless it's convenient financially, we'll tank. But as far as the press is concerned, we won't tank. It's like, give me a break. Now you're gone, another wide receiver. You didn't have money to sign anyone. Oh, you got Cody Barkan. I'm shaking in my boots right now. But the Broncos, will they be the worst team next year? No. But could they be the worst team in their division?
Easily.
That wasn't the goal with Sean Payton. And he now might be with Jim Harbaugh there, Andy Reid there. We'll see what Antonio Pierce turns into. You could also be the worst coach in your division in a couple years.
Yeah. Talk about a fall from grace. Both Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. So great way to end the top winners and losers in the NFL draft.
Yeah, but there is another loser that we have to harp on even more, because the number one fan of that losing team was talking about how they were going to go all in. He had a back and forth with Micah Parsons about how they needed to go all in, and then just having some accountability that we covered earlier. And then out of spite, out of rage, definitely not thinking when he tweeted this, he's like, all in my ass? Question mark? Skip Bayless?
Good old Skip Bayless.
What are we thinking? Do you want the entire Cowboys team in your ass? And then people roasted him for it. Definitely deservedly so. But like, not only are the Cowboys kind of falling apart, but we're kind of seeing the end of Skip Bayless here on his show, where Stephen A. Smith is doing his podcast. And honestly, it's kind of entertaining to see like 12-year-olds sending Stephen A. Smith questions. And I think doing his podcast, I think Stephen A. Smith thought he had more of like a older audience than he does, but it's a lot of younger people, a lot of people in high school who are like, what Fortnite spot would you want to land in? What's like this map on Call of Duty? And then Skip Bayless is just sitting there with his notes all serious, and it's kind of like tense the whole time. Stephen A. Smith knows how to make fun of himself a little bit, even though he still has a big ego, but like, his show on Undisputed is so boring, and the Cowboys and Undisputed are kind of falling apart. And then you have Richard Sherman gets arrested. Dak Prescott has an allegation against him. The Cowboys are falling apart, and then Undisputed and Skip Bayless' show kind of falling apart at the same time. It's kind of like you see the stars aligning in the universe, where it's like, oh, wow, both of those things happening on the same time. It's a massive sign. Now he's thinking of bringing on Paul Pierce, which honestly I think may be the best decision he could do, because Paul Pierce, talk about a entertaining sports commentator for the wrong reason. And anytime he talks, he makes his legacy that much worse. And then Keyshawn Johnson, boring. Kind of like Skip Bayless needs someone that he can go toe-to-toe with, like Shannon Sharp, who's loud, who he can get into it, like a Stephen A. Smith, who's loud, who he can get into it. But Michael Irvin, not as smart as Shannon Sharp as far as articulating arguments to like have that really good back and forth that First Take and Undisputed had. Keyshawn Johnson kind of just, he talks and then you're like, oh, right, words are coming out. It's like, you don't really remember anything he said. So it's like, it's kind of disappointing. And I thought they would have a tough time replacing Shannon Sharp. And now seeing like what First Take has become, where it's more Stephen A. Smith and friends, Skip Bayless trying to do something similar. But the problem is he's just taking all of the rejected talent over from ESPN, and his players, people who get fired like Keyshawn Johnson, Michael Irvin, I believe, had like a rape allegation or something. And then Paul Pierce getting fired. And it's not like when Skip went over to FS1, when Colin Cowherd went over to FS1, when Chris Broussard went over there, and Rob Parker and people like that, where it's like, okay, we're bringing talent over. Skip Bayless is more just picking up the rejects, not where I feel like Cowherd and Skip, like, they willingly went there to kind of build their own thing, have a little bit more creative control at FS1 than they did at ESPN, who maybe just didn't want to pay some of those people. But I feel like in Skip's case, it's a little bit different where he's kind of just bringing in the all rejects, not necessarily talent.
Well, yeah, I mean, for him, he's had 30 years of revolutionizing the sports industry, whether it be with First Take or Frozen Pizza, and then going to FS1 and kind of starting an exodus of ESPN for a while. And it took him a long time for ESPN to recover from where they are now. And I think that at this point in time, like, we're looking at the breakup of First Take, which at this point it's been about a decade, where Stephen A. Smith, he's got an opportunity to, maybe he goes into something outside of sports. He talked about potentially replacing Jimmy Kimmel on late night, or going into the comedy space, or going into just film potentially. So we have him, who has a chance to elevate outside of just being a sportscaster. And then we have Skip Bayless, who much older than Stephen A, and he's going into more of transitioning out into almost obscurity to some extent, where you have the same old shtick that you've had for the last 30 years. You have the cowboy bit. At least he's an honest Cowboys fan. That's the only thing I can really give him credit for. But with the talent there, with the show just kind of being stale over the last year or so, I think it's time for him to kind of transition more into something new, kind of then, rather than being the same trick pony. So honestly, I think that it's time for him to maybe retire, maybe go into a different field. But I think Stephen A is definitely winning the divorce at this point.
Yeah, definitely winning the divorce. And it's like Shannon Sharp went there, but it's like I'm not really watching First Take for Shannon Sharp, where like Undisputed, it was just Skip and Shannon going back and forth the whole time. They stopped really having guests on the show. And I thought that show excelled because you did have that good back and forth, where I feel like now Skip, it's kind of like, ooh, haha, go lucky show. And it's like, it's not as controversial. You don't get those heated moments that he did with Shannon Sharp. And it's kind of just like poetic that the Cowboys and Undisputed and Skip Bayless is kind of like taking a downturn at the same time. And then he was in the prime of his career when the Cowboys were really good, covering them. And then he was able to revolutionize sports, help create First Take. But I think it's time in the next few years or two for him to kind of decline. And it's always disappointing seeing one of your kind of like someone you looked up to fall off a little bit, but it's also a time you can also reflect on everything they helped accomplish and how he pushed the space forward, giving someone like Shannon Sharp an opportunity, helping create First Take and turn Stephen A. Smith's show into what it was today, where he potentially elevated Stephen A. Smith to First Take, brought him onto that show, and now Stephen A. Smith could potentially take over for Jimmy Kimmel, which is insane.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially for a guy who started in sports. So a lot of great things there. We're seeing the fall off potentially of Skip Bayless. And we're here continuing our segment of our worst NBA franchise series. We've gone over the Wizards, we've gone over the Pistons, and now we have ourselves a worthy competition with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Now, why are we doing the Minnesota Timberwolves, you might ask? This is a team that is third in the West right now. They have Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, a bunch of dogs here. They have a chance to potentially win the whole thing, potentially, according to some analysts. But we're going to go through their history here, because this is a team who has been around just as long as some of these other franchises. And what have they done? Believe it or not, the Minnesota Timberwolves have the worst winning percentage in NBA history, and that even includes the playoffs as well.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Hornets, and the Hornets were bad. You know, the highlight of that was really them bringing Steve Clifford back to coach their team again after he already proved he was a bad head coach, because we all know the second time is better, especially when you apply that to relationships and business there. And then also, we covered the Wizards, and the Wizards had won a finals, at least as the Bullets, so that's cool. And then the Pistons we covered, and they also had some nice things. But we're here with the Timberwolves because you trade away Kevin Garnett, or you have Kevin Garnett on your team, but even when Kevin Garnett was there, you went from 04-05 all the way up until 17 and 18 without a playoff appearance. And then you did it when you had Jimmy Butler there. You ended up trading for Jimmy Butler. And then Jimmy Butler hated his life in Minnesota so much that is the famous moment where he took everyone from the bench and took on the starters and beat them single-handedly. He's like, Andrew Wiggins, you are a bitch. Karl Anthony Towns, likewise to you. The sentiment is there. And then they're like, okay. Jimmy Butler leaves. He ends up going to the Philadelphia 76ers. After that, yeah, I think that was after he went to the 76ers. But you also have, what's unique about them is also the lowest winning percentage. But you could apply that to their trades as well. Because, well, they also have the worst winning percentage as far as games. They would probably have the worst winning percentage as far as trades in the NBA. And then starting off with the Kevin Garnett trade.
Yeah, the Kevin Garnett trade. I'll get the package up here, but also, while we're talking about that, how about the Rudy Gobert trade, where they gave up not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 first-round picks for the next decade, giving up for Rudy Gobert. And what has it turned into? Well, they're third in the West, so I guess that counts for something, right?
Yeah.
And then let's not include their draft woes as well, where they had not 1 but 2 opportunities to draft Steph Curry. Maybe you've heard of him. Greatest shooter of all time. At worst, top 10 player of all time. And who did they draft? They drafted Johnny Flynn, and they drafted friend of the show, Ricky Rubio.
Yeah. And it's like, no hate to Ricky Rubio, but like, is he Steph Curry? No. But would Steph Curry be who he is today in Minnesota? Probably not. And that's just the skill that the Minnesota Timberwolves have, even though they do have someone like Karl Anthony Towns, who said personally that he's going to go down as someone who changed the game. I don't know who was giving Karl Anthony Towns advice or telling him that, but Karl Anthony Towns has not changed basketball at all.
Yeah. So I have the Kevin Garnett trade here, and this is what it turned into. This was at the time the largest trade package for any player, and this is what they got.
Okay.
Hold your breath.
In history?
In history at the time, 2007. Okay. Al Jefferson, Ryan Gomes, Sebastian Telfair, friend of the show, Gerald Green, Theo Radcliffe. By the way, Theo Radcliffe at this time was in his late 30s. I want to mention that. Cash considerations, plus the Boston Celtics top 3 2009 pick, which ended up turning into Wally Szczerbiak / Ricky Davis trade. So all these players here, what did Kevin Garnett do? First year, wins the title with the Celtics, makes it to another finals, and then is a perennial contender with the Celtics. But then they get Ryan Gomes, who left immediately, Theo Radcliffe, who left basically immediately, Gerald Green ends up becoming a 2K legend. If you know, you know. Sebastian Telfair, and what turned into that, and Wally Szczerbiak.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be better off if they drafted Waleed Ahmed instead of Wally Szczerbiak with that. But yeah, I mean, you trade away Kevin Garnett and you don't make the playoffs until
there's a 15-year hiatus. Yeah, they have one of the longest hiatuses in NBA history.
Yeah, and the craziest thing is this team is okay. So you're started in 89 and 90, and then you draft Kevin Garnett, and then you didn't make the playoffs for the first 7 years of being a franchise, and then after that you make it to the playoffs, lose in the first round. You make it again, lose in the first round. Make it again, lose in the first round. You go 8 years of making the playoffs and losing in the first round. That is a skill.
That is, honestly, you want to talk about, like, we made fun of the 2010 Raptors and how consistently they were, but first round exit, first round exit, first round exit, first round exit, first round exit. This sounds like I'm on fucking repeat at this point. And then they make it to the conference finals against the Lakers at that point. And ironically enough, I mentioned to you earlier how they had the worst playoff record in NBA history. They're 21-41 in their playoff games all time. And ironically enough, 10 of their 21 playoff wins came in 2004 when they made their only conference championship, the only time they won a playoff series. So 10 of their 21, you want to call it 50% of all their playoff wins came in 2004 when it was Kevin Garnett versus Kobe and Shaq. And at the time they had Gary Payton and Karl Malone as well, facing off against that team. And then after that, building up 8 consecutive first-round exits only to just bust in the conference finals and not making a playoff appearance for 15 years. The city of Minnesota, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am sorry to the city of Minnesota, because after that, you're like, oh, we made the conference championship after losing 8 straight years in the first round. That has to be something, right? Because no, after that, you go from basically 05 to 2018, so 13 years without making the playoffs.
Do they even have a winning season in there?
I think so, because you had Kevin Love. No, you don't have a winning season. Yeah, so you go losing the conference championship. You miss the playoffs going 44-38 with Kevin Garnett, and then you don't have a winning season again until 17-18. So the year after you make the conference championship, you go 48-38. So you have a 12-year gap without a winning season.
Pathetic. And this is also missing on so many. We've gone through their history before. Check out some of our old videos about the Timberwolves, but just pathetic.
The interesting thing about the Timberwolves, though, is basically all their leaders in win shares over the course of their time have been big men. So you have Kevin Garnett, who never didn't lead them in win shares when he was there, and then it's Kevin Love, Al Jefferson, and then Karl Anthony Towns every single year he's been on the team. And then the past 2 years, Rudy Gobert. What does that tell you? And then you have this team where people are like, I think they could do good in the playoffs. I think they could potentially win.
Sure.
But first of all, the problem with Rudy Gobert is he is a tease. He's one of those players who's really good in the regular season, very useful when people don't try on defense, but he makes his bread and butter with rebounds, blocks, and things of that nature on the defensive end, but he still can't switch on the perimeter, and he is absolutely useless in the playoffs. And he's always been one of those players who can't do anything on offense. He's a good defensive player, but is he worth 5 first-round picks? Absolutely not. So you trade 5 firsts for Rudy Gobert. You get the most back in history for an NBA trade as far as assets for Kevin Garnett, and then miss the playoffs for every single year after Kevin Garnett leaves until you get Jimmy Butler. And then Jimmy Butler hates his life so much that he immediately wants to leave and go to the 76ers. And then you have Anthony Edwards now, who has been the one bright spot on your team. But I'm like, this is a team this year at the 3rd seed. They're scheduled to play like probably the Kings or the Dallas Mavericks.
Right now it's the Kings, yeah.
I mean, if we get the Kings, I know the Kings haven't been the best this year, and you could probably beat the Kings, but if De'Aaron Fox turns into what he was versus the Warriors last year, like, I don't know if it was the Warriors weren't as good as we thought they were last year, because they had just made the finals previously, but the Kings in the playoffs, like, you'll have Sabonis versus Rudy Gobert. Okay, who's going to be the most useless out of those 2 players? And then after that, is it going to be De'Aaron Fox or Anthony Edwards? And with what I saw from De'Aaron Fox last year in the playoffs, like, this is a team. And then Keegan Murray is also someone who can get extremely hot. I'm like,
they have experience with a lot of players too. They got Harrison Barnes too.
Harrison Barnes, like, this is a team that's definitely going to lose in the first round, but it's like, I don't know. I think the Wizards' history might be better there.
Well, we haven't gone over their top 12 either, because their top 12, obviously we're going to have all-time great power forward in Kevin Garnett there, and we can't say anything wrong about him. He's one of the best of all time.
Yeah.
And then it goes Karl Anthony Towns, who, big man-wise, we talked about how important the big man is to the Timberwolves. We're going to see some notable guys that we've seen, right? Karl Anthony Towns is number 2.
Yeah. Karl Anthony Towns is like one of those guys that, like, if you could sum him up in one word, it's just disappointing. I feel like he has so much talent. He could be someone like a Giannis. He could be Anthony Davis, but he just doesn't have that dog in him. Like, you are there with Anthony Edwards, and you're a big man who can shoot threes, handle it, and get to the rim at will. You could be a much better defender than you are. Like, feel like after Kevin Garnett, it's like Karl Anthony Towns, disappointing. And honestly, I would take prime Kevin Love over him.
Yeah. I think Karl Anthony Towns, if we're going to relate it to football, because we are a football podcast, he reminds me of these 2 quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, who I kind of put together because both of them are super talented. Both of them maybe not in the best situation, and both of them have so much talent, but both of them kind of let me down. They have to be in the conversation for like top in the league as far as like their position. If you're talking about best big men, he'll be in the conversation, but he isn't quite to that level of some of these other big men like a Joel Embiid, like a Joker, like a Giannis. He's a tier below, but disappointing overall.
Yeah, and then we have Wally, not even going to try and pronounce his last, Zerbiak.
Celtic
then we
legend.
have Sam Mitchell. Congratulations to you for being a Timberwolf, I guess. Then we have
Gorgio Dang.
And then the fact that Ricky Rubio is on this list isn't immediate, like, okay, you lost. Like, he's your 7th best player of all time, according to Basketball Reference, as far as win shares. Like, give me a break. And they have not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but you have 5. No, actually 6. You have 6 white guys in your top 12. What does that say about you? Basketball's an athletic sport. Like, and you know, I'm not trying to discriminate against the whites in this situation, but basketball, we know, is dominated by not white people. You have Luka.
Unless if it's the 70s Celtics, that's literally it.
Unless it's the 70s Celtics, and then Jokic and some of his fans don't even necessarily consider him to be white there. He's Eastern European or like Russian, and he's a Serbian player. So it's like you have Ricky Rubio.
Dude, the thing is with Ricky Rubio, he's one of those guys that you talk about, because we went over some of the drafts in the past, and we talk about who was picked ahead of him. He was a point guard who was drafted right before Steph Curry. That's what he's known for. And Ricky Rubio, he's been a fine starter in the NBA, and I know he retired recently. God bless his soul. But he is known as the guy who was drafted ahead of Steph Curry, the greatest point guard of all time, arguably.
Yeah.
Disaster.
Absolute disaster. And yeah, you're 6 of the top 12 players on the Timberwolves are white. I think we could pretty much go through every NBA team, and that'll be my homework. That'll be your homework in the comments. Please name me a team on Basketball Reference that has 6 of the top 12 players as white guys, and I think the answer will probably be none. Even the Celtics probably won't. You have like Kevin McHale, Larry Bird. I don't even think Danny Ainge would be in their top 12.
Probably like Bob Cousy and people like the 60s Celtics maybe, but that was the 60s. That was a different time. But the rest of this team here, I know who do we have after Ricky Rubio?
We have Terrell Brandon, Christian Laettner.
Christian Laettner, who's known for Duke. He's known for playing for Duke.
Tom Gigalotti.
Nice.
Nikola Pekovic.
Nice.
I remember him actually vividly. And then we have Joe Smith. You want to talk about an auto-generated name? Yeah, Joe Smith.
That's incredible.
So I think we found out what's wrong with the Timberwolves and why you have the lowest winning percentage in the league. We answered that question. We went over their best player, and you have Kevin Garnett on there, but is Kevin Garnett a better player all time than Isaiah Thomas? Probably not. I don't know. He's right up there. He's right up there. And then we'll go over probably the Magic next week. He's definitely better than anyone who is on the Hornets. So yeah, the Minnesota Timberwolves are a contender for the worst franchise in NBA history. Follow along that as we keep covering it. But we also have one of the worst, probably the worst quarterback draft in NFL history, the 2022 NFL draft.
Yes. So the reason why we bring this up is because we saw what happened this week where not 1, not 2, but 3 of the quarterbacks were on the move from that draft. So I have this team up here, and I can go over it real quick. The only quarterback taken from that draft in the first round was none other than Kenny Pickett, who we now know was traded for a bag of Skittles to the Eagles right there. So I have my quarterbacks list up here. We'll also go over real quick the top 10 picks in that draft and how they've panned out. But this is the quarterback draft. There's only 9 quarterbacks. I'm going to go through all of them. You can give your sentiment on all of them.
Okay.
We'll start with Mr. Kenny Pickett.
The lowest touchdown percentage of any quarterback in NFL history, and that includes Blake Bortles. That includes Luke McCown, not even Josh McCown. That includes the likes of Brian Hoyer, Jamarcus Russell, Matt Barkley, Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum. Like, the list goes on. The fact that he had of any quarterback played the lowest percentage of touchdowns in the league. What a absolute whiff. I get he didn't have as many picks as some of those other guys, but it's about production. It's about getting the ball in the end zone. And he turned them into the Guantanamo Bay Steelers. So that's the only guy in the first round. We're off to a bad start.
And then we jump to the third round, where the second guy, who is now a Arizona Cardinal, friend of the show, Desmond Ridder.
I mean, Desmond Ridder, Thoughts on
Mid.
him? The Falcons didn't want you. You left college, came into Atlanta. You thought, Lamar Jackson wasn't going to be the guy because you had Desmond Ritter there. How did that pan out for you? Not very well. He was kind of like if the Buccaneers were smart and got rid of Josh Freeman after the first year.
Yeah, that was tough. 12 picks later, though, Tennessee Titans found the future quarterback in Malik Willis.
Yeah, we had a debate with another podcast because we said Malik Willis was going to be bad. Specifically, like he played at Liberty University. But,
Yeah,
like they're known for being like the number one Christian college in the world, but their football program not very well known. And anytime you start to get into the Division II quarterbacks, unless you're from like a North Dakota or like a Utah sort of state, but like Liberty University, no. Malik Willis, they immediately drafted a quarterback the next year after him. Was not the case for Desmond Ritter. Was not the case for Kenny Pickett. They took a few years to get a quarterback after him. The Titans were immediately like, no.
he arguably might be the worst.
Yeah.
And then, sad story here, the number one, Matt Corral, who very first game in the preseason tears his ACL, is out for the whole season. They cut him because they end up drafting Bryce Young. And then the Patriots pick him up. He goes to play for the Patriots. He gets hurt and then cut.
Ugh.
And now he is in the UFL. Matt Corral.
Yeah, sad story with Matt Corral. It is a cruel league that is the NFL. So wish him the best. Hopefully he is a great quarterback for the Sea Dragons one day, but
yeah, and
not
then
in the NFL.
And then played a little bit last year, Bailey Zappi, who could be, at this point, arguably the best quarterback so far.
He's better than Kenny Pickett.
At this point, I mean, Desmond Ritter maybe, but Bailey Zappi so far, he's the 4th round pick there.
Yeah, he may be the second best quarterback in that draft, actually, because honestly, like, he was even like, I don't know. I think he could be better than Desmond Ritter.
Put him somewhere with weapons and let me find out, because it's been Tyquan Thornton and the rest of the gang there. 5th round pick, Sam Howell, who is now a Seahawk. He, at one point, was leading the league in passing. The first half of the season, he looked fine. The second half of the season, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL. So,
yeah,
Sam Howell, I don't even know what to call him, but I don't think he'll pan out to be a stud. One guy, Chris Olodokun, doesn't pass the name test, never played a snap in the NFL, 7th round pick.
Yeah.
Skip.
Yeah.
Last 2 quarterbacks, Skylar Thompson.
Yeah, no, not a fan. Not a fan of Skylar Thompson here.
Played in a playoff game. That was cool.
That's cool. I mean, he almost beat Josh Allen.
Almost.
Josh Allen almost beat himself in that game, but Skylar Thompson, like, I don't know. He played in a playoff game, so that speaks for something, I guess. Better than Kenny Pickett was.
But not as good as Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, who is literally carrying that draft by the Weems. So, thanks to him, he is the only notable quarterback who still has a job at this point in time.
Yeah, and if Brock Purdy was taken in the first round, he wouldn't be Mr. Irrelevant, and people would be like, oh, Brock Purdy's really good. But instead, he was taken in the 6th round, and people's brain can't comprehend that a player taken in the 6th round can actually pan out and be a really good quarterback. And not every single quarterback can walk into a situation with really good weapons, good head coaching, and succeed, because we've seen Kyle Shanahan try it with other quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo was ran out of town, and he's been better than him. He's been better than Kenny Pickett in that draft, Malik Willis. So he's been the best quarterback in that draft, and people are looking for excuses to tear him down, but he went to a Super Bowl, was able to compete with Patrick Mahomes, didn't end up, I don't think he had any turnovers in that Super Bowl either. So
no, it wasn't a bad game.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid game, ends up losing to the best quarterback and the best head coach in the league. No shame there. His coach didn't even know how to prepare his team to overtime. Kyle Shanahan, who should have deferred the ball in that situation. And Brock Purdy has come in and done nothing but been a mature, really good quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he's been great, honestly. And then before we conclude, we'll go over the top 10 picks. And I just need you to let me know if it's a bust, if it's a to be determined. This is only 2 years out, so might not be able to determine it, but we'll go through as quick as we can.
Okay.
Trayvon Walker at number 1.
Oh my God, he's gonna get Doug Peterson fired, because after we have another elite year from Aiden Hutchin, they'd be like, his arms were too short. Is that why we didn't take him? That's why we took Trayvon Walker, who can't rush the quarterback or do anything of value at the number
Superman.
1 pick? Like, come on.
Immediately forgotten.
Yeah.
And then number 2, Aiden Hutchinson.
Stud. Absolute stud.
Absolute stud. Number 3, Derek Stingley Jr.
Sting. He's stinging people on the football field.
He is solid. You could argue that he might be less disappointing because the pick right after him is Sauce Gardner.
Sauce Gardner. Yeah. I mean, Sauce had a really great rookie year. However, Derek Stingley Jr. is going to excel in the Texans system. Maybe Sauce is better. He probably is, and he would be better on the Texans, but still a fine pick. And
Yeah.
Sauce is elite.
Yeah, exactly. Number 5, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah. I mean, the media compared this man to Ben Simmons. Everyone owes Kayvon Thibodeau an apology.
So rude.
Because, first of all, yes, you can compare someone to Ben Simmons, but if he pans out, you deserve to lose your job, first of all, because we can go back over the takes and talk about how people like he has low motor skills. And then even if he did have a low motor on the Giants, how could you blame him when Daniel Jones was on his team? And he was nothing short of an absolute monster, and him and Bobby Okereke were really good last year, and we'll say it again, Bobby Okereke.
Number 6, Carolina Tupperville, Akeem Aquanu, tackle.
I don't know, but he was taken by the Panthers, so he's probably a bust. No offense to you, Akini Aquanu, but also you gave up 65 sacks last year to Bryce Young, so you can't be that valuable, right?
Yeah, he was fine, but I don't know. That offensive line is terrible. Evan Neal.
Yeah, so did they draft him to like hold the door open so people could get by really quickly?
Clearly.
He's basically, at this point, he's a door stopper. That's all he is.
Yeah, he can just hold the clipboard. Number 8, Drake London.
Drake London? We'll see.
To be determined. Number 9, Charles Cross, offensive lineman for the Seahawks. Good. Yeah, good. And then number 10, Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson?
Stud. Absolute stud.
Yeah, now that Garrett Wilson was taken, Drake London was taken before Garrett Wilson, you kind of bust at that point because Garrett Wilson's definitely better.
Yeah, I think he's at least underwhelming because of his injuries.
Like, what other receivers were taken in this draft?
We had Chris Olave immediately after Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
Jameson Williams kind of be determined. I'll look at some of the other wide receivers in this class as well. We had so notable wide receivers as well that I'll shout out. Traylon Burks was number 18. He did not pan out at all. Christian Watson, second round.
Christian Watson's a monster.
Yeah, he is. And then 2 picks between each other. Number 50 overall, Tyquan Thornton. Number 52, George Pickens. Number 53, Alec Pierce.
Patriots. Typical Patriots.
Typical Patriots. Let's see. 4th round, we had our Romeo Art Thou Romeo Dobbs at number 4, and then
Romeo Dobbs is all wow. The Packers get him and Christian Watson in the same draft, and the Patriots are like, nah, we're good. We'll take Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah, I think this draft should be defined. They had some really nice running backs: Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, Brian Robinson, Damian Pierce. His first year was good. Tyler Algier in the 5th round, Kyron Williams in the 5th round, and then all the way down even into the 7th round, Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah,
so great running back draft, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of those running backs will like ever be the best running back in the league, but Breece Hall definitely solid. I think like receivers and running backs are both like very, very, very good, and then quarterbacks definitely the worst in the league. And corners, shout out to the corners in this draft for being amazing because Derek Stingley Jr., players like Sauce Gardner, I believe
Reek Woolen too.
Reek Woolen was the player I was trying to think of, but overall, great defensive draft, great skill positions draft, and quarterbacks. If I was Jimmy Kimmel, I'd be like, I have this joke for you about the 2022 draft. The quarterbacks drafted.
The end.
That's the joke. But anyways, we went through every single free agent signing. Yes, we went over every single team. So if you want to stay up to date what every single team is doing, make sure you go back and watch that and subscribe. And then also we went over the biggest winners and losers. If you just want to get to the good stuff on who we thought won and who we thought was awful, we covered what is in Skip Bayless's ass this week. And then we also went over the Minnesota Timberwolves, how bad they have been in their franchise. And then we also went over the 2022 NFL draft, one of the worst quarterback drafts in history. So most importantly, that you've been recapped, previewed, whatever you may call it, stay brick.